All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos. And tonight, sponsored stream. Shout out to our anonymous sponsor for tonight's stream, in which we are going to be diving into Scientology and its occult origins. So tonight is not so much about a full in-depth analysis of the paradigm of Scientology, although certainly you're going to get some of that. And I've already seen some of the people in the comment section. I think some of you guys are probably going to know more about Scientology, generally speaking, than I do. I saw a couple people already had experiences of being in Scientology. However, the anonymous sponsor for tonight's stream, he was much more interested in really the overlap of L. Ron Hubbard's earlier career. Now, everybody knows that he was a prolific science fiction writer. Some might question the quality of his many works, but he has the Guinness Book of World Records on the most publications. But what's really interesting, again, even if you watch something like Going Clear documentary, it kind of briefly highlights the relationship between Jack Parsons, the rocket engineer who is also a Thelemite, And L. Ron Hubbard, after L. Ron Hubbard, or LRH, as the Scientologists often refer to him, gets out of the Navy and lives with Jack Parsons in his mansion, and they perform a series of sex magic rituals for the hopes that they would impregnate a woman and bring forth the Antichrist. Now, as we'll look tonight, even L. Ron Hubbard, he identifies himself as the Antichrist, and he certainly had some disgusting things to say about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Now, the point, again, of tonight's stream is to really look at Scientology not so much as a unique cult phenomenon. Certainly it is a modern cult. But when we look at it from the perspective of Thelema, and we look at it from the perspective of occultism and the utilization of the imagination, I think we're going to see that Scientology is very, very occultic. In much of its origins and its framework as a spiritual paradigm is related to L. Ron Hubbard saying that by the age of, 12 or 16, he had already read the Book of the Law by Aleister Crowley. If anybody's familiar with the Philadelphia doctorate courses, he says that Aleister Crowley was one of his good friends. Now, interesting enough, there's actually some evidence that I saw in preparation for today's stream that Aleister Crowley actually was leery of L. Ron Hubbard. Jack Parsons said that L. Ron Hubbard was the most Thelemite individual he had ever met. Again, we were going to unpack a little bit of what that might mean. But even Aleister Crowley, the famous bisexual sex magician, drug addict, man who claimed to be the Antichrist, and he signed everything as the mark of the beast, 666, the most wicked man in the world, he said, you know what, that L. Ron Hubbard guy can't be trusted. He warned Jack Parsons about L. Ron Hubbard and his inability to be relied upon, which is interesting because L. Ron Hubbard will later defraud Jack Parsons. He'll steal his girlfriend and take $35,000 and vanish. But we're going to get into all this stuff. So tonight's point is to focus on the occult origins, not so much as an unpacking of the totality of Scientology. And I got tons of videos to get into. I have a presentation to get into, again, highlighting this occult relationship of L. Ron Hubbard's fascinations with Nazi Germany, even though, again, he was a sort of failed Navy commander. He commanded 2 ships, one of which he claimed that he sunk 2 Japanese submarines, which in reality, he bombed some stationary magnetic ports or something there in the ocean, and then he opened fire on an island in Mexico. So according to Scientology, they believe that he was a war hero. They believe that he was a nuclear physicist. They believe that he was a prophet. They believe that he was an expert in Western science. They believe that he was a nuclear physicist, despite him admitting that he failed out of his physics courses. He never, I think, completed a college degree, and yet he was awarded a PhD, a sort of a doctorate degree from Sequoia University, which actually the Scientologists had already infiltrated, taken over, and purchased, and then gave L. Ron Hubbard an honorary doctorate. So he wasn't the most learned man, that's for sure. He claims that he had traveled around and studied with over 20 some indigenous groups. I'm gonna play some of the interviews that we have of L. Ron Hubbard. And he's really just a prolific liar. And he was obviously a prolific author in writing science fiction. But when I analyzed and again prep for today's stream, all I could think about is that Scientology is the end product of all of his magic endeavors and of him being this prolific liar. He wanted to always manipulate people. Again, we'll get into some of the things about him literally wanting to be a god. And he thought he would be a god as long as he was worshipped. And that's the point. That's part of what Scientology is to create an institution in which L. Ron Hubbard believes that he can become, quote, eternal or somewhat of a god. Now, again, Scientology believes in infinite reincarnations and all this different stuff, and this galactic, we'll get into Xenu and all this different stuff. But another sort of caveat here that we're going to address a little bit in today's stream. Now, I'm not going to be making this argument, but I think it's worth noting and being aware of is Project Bluebeam. obviously, there's been a lot of rhetoric lately about the existence of aliens. Now, I'm obviously very skeptical of that, and I do not believe that we're in contact with any extraterrestrial species or races. But one of the things that people have been worried about in regards to Scientology, and especially the sort of global religious ecumenism that's been proliferating really in all cultures, and we can see even the Vatican with Chrislam. It seems like Judaism, Islam, the Western parts of Christianity have been moving in this direction that if aliens do exist, Scientology puts itself in a sort of unique position to be a religion that is already talking about, millions and millions of years of intergalactic warfare and the galactic confederacy and all these different alien species and how the Thetans got here on Earth. And so is this a way that potentially Scientology hasn't even seen its brightest day yet? It's possible. It's possible. Now, Scientology, in regards to its attendees, L. Ron Hubbard ends up dying in the 80s after a stroke. And now David Miscavige is head of Scientology, and it's still making tons and tons of money. And that's really what the point of it was. I mean, L. Ron Hubbard is on the record stating that if you want to become a millionaire, you want to become wealthy, create a religion. That's exactly what he did. And he created a religion in order to get the secrets, to get the esoteric knowledge. You see the occult emphasis right off the bat. If you want to gain supernatural abilities, you want to get rid of all the engrams, all these things that are holding you down due to your reactive mind, these traumatic memories and mental images, well, then you're going to have to pay for your auditing session. And so Scientology is a structure that is totally oriented around people, one, getting sort of pragmatic advice and tools to deal with life, to become more successful. And in fact, again, not that I'm going to play this today, but I watched Grant Cardone. I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with Grant Cardone, the multimillionaire sort of guru on real estate, making money, or at least that's the way he portrays himself. He's an open Scientologist. And I saw Vlad or whoever, some hip hop interviewer, asking him about Xenu and his affiliation with Scientology. And he didn't want to address any of that. He's like, no, Scientology, look how much more money I made. Look how successful I am after I became a Scientologist. And, I was dealing with this guy and he was so successful. And I asked him, hey, man, what is it? He's like, I'm a Scientologist. And so I went and I became a Scientologist, and it changed my life. And so Scientology lures people in due to the promise of successfulness, being more productive, being a better, well-adjusted human being, and then, of course, gaining these supernatural abilities, like exteriorization, this ability to sort of get out of your body, these outer body experiences, and all this different stuff. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the basics of what Scientology is. Again, some of you guys are going to probably be more familiar with it than I am. I am not an expert on Scientology. This is a little bit outside my general wheelhouse, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, I'm quite familiar with occultism and Western esoteric tradition. So that's why our anonymous sponsor tonight, again, sponsor tonight's stream, a major thank you to him. God bless you. Really appreciate it. So the first thing, just a few things I want to talk about in regards to occultism. And, I have so much content for tonight's stream. I don't know how long this is going to go or how much we have, but before we even get into it, yeah, John Travolta, Tom Cruise, exactly. Let's just take care of some announcements right now. First thing, smash that like for everybody who's here. I want to mention, if you want to super chat at any point and you want to show some love and help out tonight, you can do so through the Streamlabs link that is pinned on the YouTube live chat, or you can use YouTube. Any channel I'm streaming on right now on YouTube should be monetized. Or you can do, thanks to Andrew Wilson, you can use the Dono Chat link. So if you prefer to use Dono Chat, I know some people do prefer to use that. You can do so right there. That is my new Dono Chat link. I also wanted to highlight that if anybody wants to help out, one of the best things you can do to support my work is to become a website member, of which, guys, I have my Montanica 2023 speech up at the website. And if you want to check out my speech from this year's Montanica event in Butte, Montana, all you got to do is become a website member. You can do so with this link right here. and you'll get access to an exclusive video library. We'll be having our fitness meeting, which we have every first Monday of the month. That will be on September 1st. So coming up here on Labor Day. And also, we have our premium members membership, if that's something you'd be interested in. Also, if anybody wants to sign up for a one-on-one session, you can do so with this link right here. This is another, if you want to have a private conversation on any topic you would like to discuss, be it religion, be it theology, be it fitness, whatever it is that you're interested in, you can have my undivided attention. We can do it, set up a one-on-one session. Or another great way to support my work is if you have a topic like our anonymous sponsor today that you would like me to dive into, do my own research, and then present it however I would prefer to present it, you can sponsor a stream as well. And I would greatly appreciate anybody who wants to sponsor a stream. And again, a major thank you goes to our anonymous sponsor. If you prefer to get your name shout out, you can. Or like today's sponsor, if you prefer to be anonymous, you can do so as well. So with that being said, now let's begin to get into today's topic, because I got, just like last time with Sam here, I got like 20 web tabs open on all different types of things. And I have a presentation, sort of PDF on the relationships between Scientology, occultism, and potentially Project Bluebeam. Again, I'm not, the point of today's stream is not to advocate that Scientology is going to be the end result in a sort of new global religion, or it's going to gain new adherents, millions of new adherents. Right now, I've seen some of the latest numbers is like 50,000, somewhere south of 100,000, potentially around 50,000 or north thereof, of adherents to Scientology. Now, of course, every member of Scientology is a paying member, and they have to pay to elevate themselves through this network. And to begin with, then what exactly is Scientology? Okay, so this is just a brief overview for tonight's stream. Some of you, again, are going to be more sophisticated on this than I am. Scientology is a general understanding of how one reorients themselves to become the fullness of who they were meant to be due to the baggage of these engrams, these traumatic events due to multiple lives. So Scientology is inherently a reincarnational worldview. As we'll see, L. Ron Hubbard was very antagonistic towards Christianity and the Christian religion. And so he claims he studied all these different places in East Asia, of which some scholars are quite skeptical of these claims. Again, L. Ron Hubbard is a habitual liar. So, again, the point of his, and he even admits, nothing can persist without a lie. And so even with his adoption of Crowley, who is foundational to L. Ron Hubbard's Scientology, he will take something from Crowley and then he'll add a new little twist to it, a new little lie, a new little caveat. And L. Ron Hubbard, you have to realize, again, this guy is a prolific, the most prolific scientific or science fiction writer, rather, not scientific, because no scientific community actually upholds the truths of Scientology. But Scientology believes that you and I are basically spirits, thetans, and we are persons that are dealing with all these traumatic events, these engrams, and we need to get rid of these engrams. These traumatic memories could be of this life, could be the way your mother talked to you, could be something happened in a previous life, could be the way you died. Any of this stuff could be it. And you get rid of these things by going and participating in what's called an auditing session. An auditing session is where here, I'll show you guys. You will grab onto these e-meters, and I'll show you what that looks like right here. This is an e-meter. Okay. So this is an e-meter right here. You can see L. Ron Hubbard's Dianetics. You see this sort of electrical device. You would grab these two little things that look like pop cans, and it would then begin to read the electrical pulses. And they may ask you about, hey, what were you, the meter just spiked there. What were you thinking about? Oh, well, I was thinking about the argument I had with my wife. Well, tell me a little bit more about that. What were you guys arguing about? Well, she was just mad at me because of, this reason or that reason. And, we're really having problems. Oh, well, what are some of the problems? Well, she found out that I've been texting some other girl, or I've had a fling, or, oh, okay. And so these auditing sessions are like confessions. And some people who have been derogatory towards religion, generally speaking, try to say, oh yeah, well, he got this from Christianity. This is just another form of confession. But I think it certainly is a cathartic aspect to Scientology, and why people, and again, if you watch the documentary like Going Clear or some of these Scientology documentaries, this is one of the people who immediately join. This is one of the things that they always say is, man, I felt so free after my auditing session, because what they do is you're holding on to these cans and or these metal handles, if you will. The meters then are going, and the auditor is asking you questions to try to get you to bring out these engrams, these traumatic memories, these mental images that need to be dealt with. And some of them will say, oh, well, that's probably from a previous life. Tell me what, close your eyes. What are you seeing? Oh, well, as the Going Clear documentary talks about, it's like, well, I'm seeing, 19th century France. Oh, tell me a little bit more about that. What are you wearing? Who are you with? What happened? And it allows people to dive deeper and deeper and deeper into the imagination. Now, this is one of the big caveats and differences, as I've talked about, with Orthodox Christianity, and even regards to various forms of Western Christianity, like Catholicism, who there are, Ignatius, who advocates for people to get into their mental images during prayer. Now, Orthodoxy believes that the demonic warfare and the battlefield you have with evil spirits is first and foremost in your imagination. Where is the noetic realm? Angels and demons are noetic beings, and it's the mind. It's the nous for us Orthodox, but it's your noetic faculties. Your imagination is a point in which you are engaging with non-local entities, and they can attack you. They can send you images. The whole point of Scientology is to dive deeper and deeper and deeper into these mental images, into your imagination. And this is partly why you think, well, how can these people believe in Xenu and this galactic confederacy? Well, it begins small. Somebody goes to the Church of Scientology, which is not really a church at all. And we can discuss, again, how exactly they got their tax exempt status was due to a war that they basically had with the IRS. But other people may say, there's a lot of speculation about L. Ron Hubbard and his potential relationship to intelligence agencies and the whatnot. So we'll keep that open. But Scientology will perform different rituals. So like maybe you'll stare, you'll stand in front of somebody and you'll confront them in a way with eyes closed, or you'll try to telepathically communicate, or you'll have an outer body experience. This is called exteriorization. You may go to the Church of Scientology and say, hey, I met somebody that's a Scientologist. They told me I should come here. What exactly do you guys believe in? What can you do for me? And they'll say, well, what do you want? What do you need? And so Scientology usually provides something in exchange. Could be the catharsis of the auditing sessions, could be helping you with your career, could be with organizing your life, could be getting you to become more disciplined. Real pragmatic things that we all should incorporate into our lives. But again, to get the next tidbit, to get the next piece of the secret information, because the entire pyramid of Scientology is based on these sort of secret knowledge, these special superpowers that you'll be able to heal yourself. You have a gimp leg from birth. Well, you need to become a Scientologist and start going through your auditing sessions, and you'll probably be able to heal yourself through Dianetics. This is again the book that L. Ron Hubbard wrote before actually founding the Church of Scientology. He wrote a book called Dianetics, which is again incredibly inundated with Crowleyan thelemic ideas. But this was a very hot topic. So after he wrote it, I mean, this was like on a top 10 book on the New York Times bestseller for many, many months. This is how L. Ron Hubbard really got going. And so Scientology is this construction that he builds more and more and more on top of the Dianetic process. So Scientology, then, it's a lot of different things. You can't really just say what exactly do they believe in a God. they claim that they believe in a sort of supernatural entity. Do you need to worship that God? No, they're explicit. You don't need to worship a God. In fact, the point is for you to become a God, and that you then need to become clear. And going clear is you've then sort of cleansed yourself of all these engrams, these negative memories, these traumatic events. And once you've gone clear, now you can get into the OT section, OT1, OT3, OT8. These are the operating thetans where you, again, I'm going to play some videos of a couple people that were OT3. And that's when you get this special briefcase. You open up the briefcase and you have a handwritten letter from L. Ron Hubbard describing the fact that this galactic entity or tyrant or authoritative king Xenu started to spread thetans and these spirits across the not the United States, but the world, the U.S. He claims that they landed in a volcano in Hawaii 75 million years ago, even though that volcano didn't exist according to modern geologists. Now, I'm very skeptical of modern geologists myself, but they claim that even on their construction of the timeline, that volcano didn't exist. But you get into these higher and higher and higher and higher levels. And to get into the OT section, the operating things, where now you, instead of auditing and somebody's auditing you, an auditor, where you have to hold these things and somebody's asking you questions to see how the meter works, you now are holding both meters in one hand, and now you're closing your eyes and you're having conversations, because according to OT3, this letter that Hubbard writes out, he claims that these thetans, these spirits that are intergalactic from different planets, that are then roaming the entire planet and attaching themselves to humans, that there's thousands of them that are attached to you. And so now that you've gone clear, now that you've dealt with all your memories and your traumas, now it's time for you to self-audit, and you audit the thetans, which now are grabbing and attaching to yourself. So again, it just goes higher and higher and higher. So some important terms and important ideas within Scientology is exteriorization, which is basically an out-of-body experience, which is celebrated. It's considered to be a sort of superpower. So they claim that, again, as you become more clear, as you move up the hierarchy there, that you'll gain clairvoyance, you'll be able to heal, you'll be able to do all these supernatural powers, many things that, again, magic has promised people, or that witches and magicians and sorcerers have pursued for nauseum. Tone 40 is another important one, because intention is the word that's used in Scientology as opposed to will. Now, again, it's quite clear that L. Ron Hubbard was fascinated with the works of Aleister Crowley, and Thelema is just a Greek term for the will, and Thelema is a magical tradition that is about the celebrating and the development of one's will and its ability to sort of manifest things, pursue its own goals, manipulate other people. All this stuff is celebrated. All this stuff is promoted in Thelema, and it's true in Scientology. So Scientology, in the entire system, I see it as, is the manifestation of L. Ron Hubbard's will. And it then is creating a system where these people are looking to become liberated. They're looking to become free when they become a Scientologist. But what happens is they just become more and more and more dependent on the structure. And it's amazing where people get and what they're able to give up or disconnect from suppressive peoples, right? The church will deem, you know what? Your mother said something really negative about the church. You need to disconnect from her. And when you disconnect, that means you can't talk with her anymore. You have to totally disconnect from these people. But one of the highest emotional states is what's called tone 40. And it's the serenity of beingness. I say, oh, well, that's sweet. Serenity of beingness. Well, that's what Scientology just uses, tons and tons of words that you think they mean one thing, but they actually mean something else. And it's the empowerment of the will, or intention without reservation. And so if somebody deems that they are, not aligned with the church, they're not being honest with the auditor. Well, then tone 40, this serenity of beingness, says that they're able to yell at you, berate you, confront you, use their will to manipulate you so that you will conform. You must conform. And so Scientology has been notorious for its violence towards its members, its violence towards anybody who speaks out against it. And you can see this whole structure is like everybody sort of participating in this alternate reality, this alternate understanding of what's going on in the world. And at the same time, one of the things that's so alluring about it is it's telling the people who become Scientologists, you're saving the planet. You're saving the human race. You're elevating us to the next point in our evolution. And therefore, you are ahead of something. You know the secrets that nobody else on the planet does. All these other people are holding us back, but you as a Scientologist, you're taking us to the next level. You're the peak of human evolution. So you can see for somebody, it's quite endearing because you think, man, I'm actually contributing to something that is so much bigger than myself that, again, you listen to former Scientologists, they say, I felt like it was a privilege to be a Scientologist. So tone 40 then is an important idea. Intention is the same as will in thelemic magic. This is important understanding. So if you're reading or you're listening to anybody, Scientologists talk about their ideas, whenever they use the word intention, think about will in the understanding of how that's used in thelema. Hubbard admits that Scientology has the tools to make slaves. And that was his point. These slaves then elevate through this hierarchy of liberation when really the book Dianetics is really built on these practices that were already in place in the late of the 1800s. And so for lack of a better term, Dianetics, or at least the practices that L. Ron Hubbard promotes, Sigmund Freud, who certainly I'm not the biggest fan of, I think he himself was a bit of a degenerate. He thought the practices of Dianetics, now that again, it wasn't called Dianetics, and we can get into again his magical relationship with Hathor, the Egyptian goddess, the Empress, who L. Ron Hubbard claims wrote Dianetics because he claimed that it was an automatic writing session, that it was dictated to him by the Empress, the same Empress that he was doing these magical rituals with Jack Parson. And so he admits that Scientology was about making slaves. Sigmund Freud made this really interesting point that in regards to the practices that Dianetics promotes, he said it actually makes people more dependent on the therapist, because these things were again noted in the end of the 19th century. And like the first person who to undergo this therapy actually became a drug addict and had to be induced into a psych ward. And Sigmund Freud then was like, wow, we shouldn't do these practices because it actually makes people more dependent on the therapist and doesn't allow them the transference, right? Sigmund Freud's whole psychology was that, you know, all these repressed sexual emotions and desires through your adolescence or when you're a child, then they are transferred onto other people when you're an adult, keeping you in this adolescent state. And he believed that Dianetics did not help with that at all. In fact, it did the opposite, and it made people more and more and more dependent on the therapist, despite the practices promising them more and more liberation. So you can understand then, the deeper you go into the Scientology hierarchy, the harder it is to get out. And often, because people who get into these OT levels, the operating things, so they've already gone clear, they've already gotten rid of all their engrams. And these engrams, so part of the psychology of within Scientology is that you have the analytic mind and you have the receptive mind. Or I'm sorry, what they call the reactive mind. I apologize. But the reactive mind is receptive in the sense that it's filled with all these engrams and these repressed memories, and therefore it clouds the mental faculties of yourself. You have to audit these things out. You have to get rid of all these engrams. And once you do, you're going to have a purely analytic mind that it basically can't fail. It thinks, it sees data, it solves problems, and it's incapable of error when it's fully clear. This is so when you're moving up through these hierarchies, these auditing sessions, the reason why a Scientologist continues to pay and pay and pay for the auditing session is they believe that they're getting rid of these engrams by essentially confessing the deepest, darkest things. And if not, and sometimes just totally making things up, going on a joyride in their imagination and believing that they're dealing with a trauma from 3 previous lives or something like that. But they feel this cathartic release, and so they're going deeper and deeper in it, what they believe to be ascending higher and higher and higher, to the point where they believe they're going to have an analytic mind that actually can't err because they're clear. And so the reactive mind is the unconscious part of the mind. It's the unconscious part of the mind. And so that's why these auditing sessions and diving deeper into your imagination, again, we could already suspect why that would be problematic, because that is really the point of demonic warfare. They want you to dive deeper and deeper into the imagination, deeper into the unconscious mind, so you can resolve these engrams, these traumatic experiences. Now, they believe that a thetan, which is going to become important, it is an immortal spirit of which that is who you are, and your personality and who you really are is actually the thetan. You're not the body. The body is not that important. It's not who you really are. It's not the point that is reincarnating into multiple lives within the Scientology worldview. And so one of the biggest points in Scientology, and L. Ron Hubbard was clear with this, is that we need to make Scientology keep working. This is like the number one rule in Scientology, is keep Scientology working. This is a huge point. And L. Ron Hubbard, again, doing some research, he had this really interesting point about games. And he said, games, there's players and there's pieces to the game. Some people are the pieces. Some people are the players. The players play by the rules of the game, and they manipulate the pieces. So who are the pieces? It could be people in society. It could be people on the lower rungs of Scientology. But he said, then there's the game maker. And the game maker is beyond the players, and he doesn't play by the rules. And L. Ron Hubbard is the game maker. He's the game maker. And he then is literally referred to as source by some Scientologists. So going clear, another term you need to know, is having rid yourself of all your engrams, your traumas, and your reactive mind, the unconscious mind that has then collected all these memories of your previous lives. An operating thetan, this is the OT level, which again, he's really getting from the OTO, because the order, the Ordo Templi Orientis, the magical order that Crowley was a part of, literally says, again, it talks about the OTO8 level. This is where they get the OT8. So he just adds a structure of the Ordo Templi Orientis on top of, again, aspects that he had already put forth, the whole getting clear, that all these levels in regards to going clear. And then he created a new structure, and this was the operating thetans. This is where then people realize that they are inundated with all these thetans, all these immortal spirits that have been here for millions of years due to Xenu placing them here, and that you then have to do self-auditing, and now you have to audit the thetans. That's what the operating thetan is. That's what OT1 is. OT2 is. OT3 is that you're now auditing the thetans yourself, because you're clear, you're in control, you're the master. Now you have to audit these thetans and get rid of them. And so then the last one I wanted to highlight is a suppressive person. As I said, a suppressive person is anyone who is hostile to Scientology and the enterprise that they are a part of. And therefore, one who is a Scientologist must absolutely disconnect with that person. They must disconnect that person. Hypnotically Caucasian says, don't hate the player, hate the game. Ron Hubbard. Yeah, basically. So it looks like we got a few super chats, and I'm going to address these super chats as we move through the stream today. So I'm not saving them towards the end. The first super chat we had actually comes from my man BMX 1966. BMX 1966 throws in $10 and says, great stuff. Well, thank you so much, BMX 1966. God bless you, bro. And the next super chat came in from my man Frankie D. Frankie D throws in $4.99 and says, bro, you've been putting out the vids. God bless. I'm over here on Central Time, so weird to think you start videos at this time, but it's earlier, MDT PST. Yeah, well, like I said, I'm going on vacation, and I told the guy that I was going to do this stream before I left. And this stream did require a lot more research than I was expecting, because I wasn't familiar with, again, the occult origins of Scientology. It's something I really never dove into that much. It never really interested me that much. So this one took a lot more research, and I needed to get it done before I left. So that's why we did it. And that's why I didn't start till 8:30 tonight Eastern Standard, which usually I'm a 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock streamer. So thank you so much, Frankie D. God bless you, brother. Really appreciate the support. And my man Mud, a COTEL crew YouTube member, throws in $2 and says, "Make Scientology great again." Yeah, let's hope not. Let's hope not about that. So, and then a few things that I wanted to say in regards to some of these occult origins, because we're going to be, again, we got so much content to get through tonight. Is something called the Philadelphia Doctorate Course. This was a series of lectures that L. Ron Hubbard gave in Philadelphia. And he refers to, again, Crowley as his good friend here, which, again, is debated. Some people, many people believe that they've never met. L. Ron Hubbard, again, was a prolific and habitual liar. So whatever he says, it's probably the opposite, because his whole thing is about manipulating you through his will, through the fantasy, through the story, right? This guy's a science fiction writer. The whole thing is getting you to believe in a narrative so that you can fall for it with little bits of truth. And that's where Scientology, especially at the entrance level, the stuff is actually effective. It's actually working for people. That's why they join Scientology. It's not just, and something, and shout out to the Theoria Zone. He had some experience with Scientology, and he highlighted that the people, they're not dumb. And they're not usually, like, you listen to them, they're usually well-spoken. It's not like they're, just, no brain, dumb people. They're not. They're usually well-read. They're articulate. And it's about, again, acquiring more information, learning more. I want to know the secrets. I want to elevate. And so it's a mixture of this sort of Eastern mystical worldview built upon the principles and the axioms of occultism, specifically Thelema and Aleister Crowley, and then re-articulated in sort of scientific jargon. And L. Ron Hubbard would literally write about something which has no scientific foundation, and he would just absolutely be adamant that this was the scientific truth. This was a scientific discovery, of which then the scientific community would say, "What are you talking about? We have no evidence for this." But it didn't matter, because the guy is a prolific liar. So he just says whatever he needs to say to get you to think or begin to see the world in a certain way. But these Philadelphia Doctorate courses, he recommends the Master Therion. This is a book by Aleister Crowley, literally highlighting sort of his understanding of magic and the principles of magic. L. Ron Hubbard literally says that this book has great in common with his understanding of Dianetics and Scientology. He describes Crowley's Joker tarot card, or the Fool. And you can tell that L. Ron Hubbard was already aware of Aleister Crowley's sort of original tarot deck and his symbolic understanding of that. L. Ron Hubbard claims that he read the Book of the Law, and some people claimed this is true to Nibs Hubbard, or L. Ron Hubbard Jr., the first child L. Ron Hubbard had, actually became quite antagonistic to his father's enterprise. He's often referred to as Nibs Hubbard, and I'm going to play an interview in tonight's stream of that. But Nibs Hubbard claimed that the Book of the Law, which is laying out, again, Thelema, that do what thou wills, this is the highest of the law. This has come from the Book of the Law. That the Book of the Law was L. Ron Hubbard's Bible. That's according to his son, who was his right-hand man throughout the 50s, 60s, and into the 70s. I think it was like 15 or 18 years. He was helping his father grow Scientology until eventually he just became disenfranchised with it and became very critical of his father and Scientology quite publicly. But then he was sued, and he settled. And he basically agreed. He was broke. He didn't have much money. He died. I think he had one of his foot amputated. He was plagued with diabetes and health problems, Nibs Hubbard. And he was sued by the church and his father, and he basically agreed to not speak out publicly against the church for a lump sum. I think somebody that I listened to said $400,000. Maybe that was the case. I'm not sure. Again, the man wasn't very wealthy and wasn't in the best health, and he basically, for fear of his life and the amount of persecution the church, again, issues towards suppressive peoples, he just settled, and he just never said anything publicly again. He signed basically a document recanting everything he said publicly. Now, you can go online and find out some of the stuff he said about his dad. And one of the things he says is that the book of the law was actually his Bible. Crowley was in a rival magical group to Heinrich Himmler. And some people have speculated that L. Ron Hubbard had a sort of affinity or a soft spot for some of the occult practices in Nazi Germany. And this is going to tie into a book that was written in German called Scientology, which was really about a understanding of the Aryan theory that the Nazis put forth, which is tied to a sort of magical worldview. And this is the basis of what they were trying to do through eugenics, was return back to this pristine Aryan state that this book Scientology was actually describing. And so the term Scientology was not created by L. Ron Hubbard. It was actually a book that was written in German in the 1930s. And I'm going to highlight that to you here in a few. So guys, smash that like if you're here. I would really appreciate that. We got another super chat that came in as well. Let me address that again. I want to address these as we go through tonight, so we're going to have a lot of fun. R.I.P. DPH, Tom Coombe and John Travolta going to have to come shut it down. Thanks, Ender. I appreciate that. Well, pray for me, brother. Pray for me. I need the Lord Jesus Christ to protect me from all this witchcraft and occultism. So I appreciate it. Shout out to you, Ender. And hey, Harry Serpanos throws in $10 as well. He says, thanks, DPH, for researching the subject matter and exposing this Gnostic-like occult group. And it is. It's very Gnostic. It's absolutely Gnostic. It's a Gnostic occultism that promises things. And that's where it's sad, is you look at the lives it destroys, and these people absolutely believe that they're going to be saved, that they're going to acquire these supernatural abilities, that they'll be able to heal themselves, because that's part of the lore of L. Ron Hubbard. He claims that he was blind and had a deformed foot, and he healed himself using Dianetics, which you can look into the naval record. That didn't happen. He was never blind. He lied about it. Again, the guy's a prolific liar. Everything about him is a lie. And he never healed himself from anything, but what the claim was that he healed himself using Dianetics. And this is why then so many Scientologists thought, we can use these same principles and we'll be able to heal ourselves. So another concept that he got from Aleister Crowley, at least many people speculate, I would agree based, again, I'm no expert, but based on my research, it makes sense, is that L. Ron Hubbard always talked about the trauma of birth, This is something that also Aleister Crowley talked about. And Scientology is notorious for its promotion of abortion. Now, Scientology doesn't promote homosexual and aberrant forms of sexuality. This is considered to be a sort of mental illness, according to L. Ron Hubbard. And even today, with David Miscavige in the Church of Scientology still, this is where the LGBTQ community is very critical of Scientology because of their beliefs on sexual relationships. But they are notorious for forcing people that are part of the Sea Org. So the Sea Org is a group that's really sort of the closest or inner members of Scientology that L. Ron Hubbard creates when he is basically on the run for tax evasion, for fraud. And he starts sailing around the Mediterranean. He basically sets up shop in like Tunisia and goes to different ports. And he creates a sort of, now remember, he was in the Navy, and he was a Navy commander of 2 different ships, of which again, he blew it on both of them, and the Navy just pulled him back. Some people speculate, though, that he could have been part of the Navy intelligence. So the Office of Naval Intelligence could be. Might make a little bit of sense. Many people speculate that L. Ron Hubbard had the backing of certain people by the CIA and some of the American intelligence agencies. That would make sense to me. But he was on the run from the U.S. government for tax evasion, and he set up shop in the Mediterranean. Now, at this point, there were Scientology groups because of the growth of and the proliferation of the book Dianetics. They were all over the place. Their headquarters was technically in England, of which he wasn't even allowed to be in England. I'm going to play a video showing the castle that they lived in. And he created this Sea Org organization of these inner members, and they started sailing around. So the Sea Org still exists. I mean, Scientology still has a ship, I believe, that they still sail around in. So, yeah, that's what I was highlighting, Chima, is that, yeah, there's many rumors that Hubbard was involved with the CIA. So I definitely agree with that. So another thing is that for something to persist, he says there must be a lie to it. Now, of course, we believe that truth sets us free. We believe in Jesus Christ, who was the incarnation of truth. That truth is what should be pursued at all costs, and that truth is what persists. Well, according to L. Ron Hubbard, it was the exact opposite. That if you need something to persist, you need to lie about it. And he talks about then the Empress, and this is basically a variation of Aleister Crowley's Holy Guardian Angel. Some of you are going to be familiar with like the Book of the Law and Ayahuasca, the sort of alien, almost like a tall alien gray looking entity that Crowley claims to have dictated the Book of the Law to him, the basis of Thelema. Well, L. Ron Hubbard, and when he was in his sort of cahoots with Jack Parsons and their occult rituals, which we're going to read a little bit about, he talks about the Empress, this woman, this goddess that is guiding him, that he claimed that she was wearing green. And if you look at the Dianetics books that came out, the early Dianetics books, they were all green with gold. Well, he claims that the Empress, this goddess figure who is dictating these things to him, he claims that she wore green and she had like goldish reddish hair. Well, now you can see again the occult relationship. Why, when then the book Dianetics, again, the earlier copies were published, now it looks different, but it was a solid green book with gold letters, because he told this privately, so it wasn't something super public, but it's now public information. He says that the Empress dictated Dianetics to him. Now, really, it's an amalgamation of Crowley and all this different stuff, but he's still, even Scientologists have to admit that L. Ron Hubbard talks openly about the power of automatic writing. He's very open about it, that you basically, and that's where I don't know if you guys have seen the South Park episode where it talks about Xenu and what Scientologists actually believe. At the end, they like slide the paper over to Stan and like, well, just write. He's like, I don't know what to write. And he's like, neither did L. Ron Hubbard. You just close your eyes and whatever comes to you. Well, he's kind of open that was part of the way that he worked. So, the Babalon working, this has to do with some of his relationship. Let's pull this stuff up. Some of his relationship with Jack Parsons. Now, we got tons of clips here, so I don't know where exactly all of them are. We're looking for Babalon working. Here we go. Babalon working. So the Babalon working was a series of magic ceremonies and rituals performed from January to March 1946 by author, pioneer, rocket fuel scientist, and occultist Jack Parsons and Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. This ritual is essentially designed to manifest an individual incarnation of Babalon. Their goal was to bring forth the Antichrist. And they were very explicit about this. And later in life, L. Ron Hubbard claims that he himself was the Antichrist. Publicly, explicitly. Now, again, he says disgusting things about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. He claims that he was a homosexual, that he was a pedophile, that he loved little boys, that he was like prone to angry outbursts. Again, you can already see the sort of satanic, demonic nature of L. Ron Hubbard. Everything that is true, again, I told you, the guy lies about everything. He's clearly a child of the father of lies, and we know who that is. But the goal of the Babalon working in these rituals was to perform sex magic and ceremonial rituals to invoke the Antichrist. This is what Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard were up to. And so there is some homoerotic dimensions to it. Like Jack Parsons talks about how L. Ron Hubbard was there watching him masturbate while L. Ron Hubbard was performing the ritual of summoning certain entities and spirits during the ceremony. So people have speculated that they have actual homosexual like interactions. Most people would say no, there's no evidence to it. But based on Jack Parsons, we know that certainly he was masturbating to, again, perform some of this sex magic, and L. Ron Hubbard was right there helping and aiding in the ritual. Hubbard takes Sarah, Parsons' girlfriend. So if we read a little bit further here, almost immediately after Parsons declared that the first of the series of rituals was complete and successful, he met this, who's a Hollywood actress, Marjorie Cameron, who wanted to be the conduit for the Antichrist. So she wanted to be impregnated. She in his home and regarded her as the elemental that he and Hubbard had called through the ritual. So again, the masturbating, the sexual ritual dynamics, they got these rituals from Aleister Crowley, again, famous for his sex magic, often, again, having a homosexual nature to him. Crowley was open about being penetrated and penetrating other men. Well, L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons were into this. They try to summon a woman to that they would be able to bring forth the Antichrist with. This was this Marjorie Cameron. And so soon Parsons began the next stage of the series, an attempt to conceive a child through sex magic workings. Although no child was conceived, this did not affect the result of the ritual. To that point, Parsons and Cameron, who Parsons now regarded as the Scarlet Woman of the Book of Revelation, was Babalon and called forth the ritual. He soon married her. The rituals performed drew largely upon rituals and sex magic described by English author and occult teacher Aleister Crowley. Crowley was in correspondence with Parsons during the course of the Babalon working and warned Parsons of his potential overreactions to the magic he was performing while simultaneously deriding Parsons' work to others. So, anyways, L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons had a girlfriend named Sarah, and Jack Parsons grew up from a very wealthy family. Again, for those of you who don't know, let's see, I got it somewhere. This is Jack Parsons. Yeah. So here's Jack Parsons. Again, he was famous for his as a jet propulsion, working at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, rocket engines, all this different type of stuff. And he was a notorious occultist. That's what I had down here, is that he was, adhered to the occult philosophy as Thelema, which had been found in 1904 by Crowley, so on and so forth. 1945, Parsons gave a speech to the Agape Lodge, in which he attempted to explain how he felt that the book of the law could be made relevant to modern life. This is, again, quotes from Jack Parsons. The mainspring of an individual is his creative will. The will is the sum of his tendencies, his destiny, his inner truth. It is one with the force that creates or makes the birds sing and the flowers bloom, as inevitable as gravity, as implicit as a bowel movement. It informs alike atoms and men and suns. To the man who knows this will, there is no why and why not, or why not, nor can or cannot. He is. There is no known force that can turn an apple into an alley cat. There is no known force that can turn a man from his will. This is the triumph of genius that, surviving the centuries, enlightens the world. This force burns in every man. And so you can see Jack Parsons was very much into the Thelemic worldview. And as I said earlier, he identified L. Ron Hubbard when there's a correspondence he has with Aleister Crowley, of which Crowley says, be careful, L. Ron Hubbard can't be trusted. Jack Parsons says L. Ron Hubbard is the most Thelemic man or individual he has ever met. And why so? I think it's because his ability to just bold-faced lie to people. Well, L. Ron Hubbard actually stole Jack Parsons' girlfriend, Sarah. And again, like I said, Jack Parsons was very wealthy. He lived in this massive mansion, this almost castle. This is where they would do these magical rituals, this sex magic. And L. Ron Hubbard stole his girlfriend and also stole $35,000. This was like in the 1940s. So $35,000 went a fairly long way in the 1940s. And so Jack Parsons wrote about it. I think it was something like the double-edged sword of freedom or something of that nature, where he talked about how L. Ron Hubbard basically snookered him, took his girlfriend, and they went to like Florida or something on a yacht. I forget. But yeah, so that's L. Ron Hubbard. And so Hubbard did a blood ritual with the goddess Hathor. Hathor is a goddess in the Egyptian pantheon. She's considered as a sort of fertility goddess, a life giver, if you will, but she also has a very vengeful side. You could argue that she's sort of like the Kali figure of the Egyptian pantheon. So Kali, if you're familiar with the South Indian deity in the Tamil culture of the tantric Hinduism, where she's standing on the chest of her husband Shiva. She's the tantric form of Shakti, the female spark or energy in the Hindu worldview. Hathor is kind of that. So you can see, again, we've talked about the Empress. We are going to see that L. Ron Hubbard is totally interested in these magical understandings, in this relationship he claims to have with this entity called the Empress, which many people have speculated is tied to this blood ritual that he did with the goddess Hathor. Hubbard claimed to be the Antichrist, as I said, and that suppressive people, he claimed, have a negative animal magnetism. He gets this from Mesmer. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like mesmerism. This comes again from the 19th century, but this was an understanding of like how energies worked and all this type of stuff. Oh, I didn't see there's a super chat that came in. Shout out to Virtuoso Maximoso. Throws in $5. Says John Travolta's autistic son died from a seizure. Often autistic folks are treated with fiatic medication. Interesting. Yeah, I'm definitely not familiar with any of that, but thank you so much, Virtuoso Maximoso, for the super chat. I do appreciate it, brother. And so I wanted to highlight that. And then I wanted to also highlight that we're going to read a section called the affirmations of L. Ron Hubbard. So the affirmations are something that are a bit controversial. The Scientologists don't really want them to be discussed too much. They question the legitimacy of them, but now it's a fact. It's known that they are authentic. And they're a series of writings that were never supposed to become public. They're basically L. Ron Hubbard's letters to himself, writings to himself, his affirmations, and we're going to read some of them. In fact, we can just do that right now. Let's see. Where is his affirmation? I got him somewhere. Affirmation. Here we go. So the affirmations, also referred to as the admissions, is a document written around 1946 or 47. It does not list an author, but is widely believed to have been written by L. Ron Hubbard. And multiple people in the Church of Scientology have come out and said that these documents were, in fact, in the church, and so that they were authentic because L. Ron Hubbard put them there. The document consists of a series of statements by and addressed to Hubbard relating to various physical, sexual, psychological, and social issues that he was encountering in his life. After the affirmations became public knowledge in 1984, the Church of Scientology initially disputed their authenticity. However, they later effectively admitted the document's authorship, describing the legal work in papers as having been written by Hubbard and seeking to retain ownership of it. The affirmations were intended to be used as a sort of self-hypnosis. Now, this is really interesting because if you go to hypnosis in Scientology, they'll tell you that, oh my gosh, we don't do hypnosis. Hypnosis is terrible. We would never do that. But yet at the same time, we know that L. Ron Hubbard actually learned how to use like hypnosis on people. This was, again, through some of his relationships with magic and during that whole period in the 40s and 50s. And so publicly he would say, oh, no, Scientology, we definitely do not do any forms of hypnosis at all. Never. No way. We're against all that stuff. And then we see that he himself is using affirmations for sort of self-hypnosis. And before Scientology was founded, he was also admitting to the use of hypnosis to various people. So I want to read this little section here. This is a little bit about L. Ron Hubbard in case I missed anything. L. Ron Hubbard had become a well-known writer of pulp fiction stories in the 1930s before he joined the U.S. Navy in 1941. A few months before the U.S. entered World War II, his military career was not a success by any means, although you ask a Scientologist, they'll tell you that he was a war hero of World War II. He was removed from both the vessels that he commanded after disagreements with his superiors and an incident in which he inadvertently shelled a neutral island in Mexico. He spent a lengthy spell in hospital with chronic stomach ulcers in that last year of the war, which he claims that he was blind and had a foot problem and healed himself through Dianetics, which of course wasn't true. He's a habitual liar. After the war ended in 1945, he moved in with Jack Parsons, a rocket scientist and occultist who shared a large house in Pasadena, California, with various like-minded individuals. Hubbard was an enthusiastic participant in the sex magic rituals, which Parsons, a member of Aleister Crowley's Ordo Templi Orientis, performed with the aid of his girlfriend and muse, Sarah Betty Northrup, who was 21 years old in 1945. Hubbard subsequently eloped with Sarah to Florida and eventually married her bigamously without divorcing his first wife, Polly, whom he had abandoned in Washington State, along with their young son, L. Ron Jr. So L. Ron Jr. is, let's see, L. Ron Jr. is, dang it, there he is right here. So he's called Nibs Hubbard. L. Ron, he joined and actually began working with his father, as I said, but he became quite disenfranchised with him. And this is L. Ron Hubbard's junior son, or often referred to as Nibs Hubbard, talking about that. At some point, yeah, can you imagine a guy, you leave your wife and your son, you go then to Jack Parsons' magical mansion, you steal his girlfriend, you steal $35,000, and then you marry the 21-year-old girl that you just stole from your supposed friend while you're still legally married to another woman. That again, the dude he's sinister, man. He had no conscience. At some point around 1946 and 47, Hubbard is said to have composed what became known as the affirmations or admissions. They are written in the intention of reading them into a recording device and playing them back to himself as a form of self-hypnosis. The document came to light in 1984 court case, Church of Scientology versus Gerald Armstrong, when the Church of Scientology's former archivist, Gary Armstrong, read sections of them into the record against the strong objections of the church's lawyers. Other sections of the document were subsequently posted on the internet by Armstrong after someone anonymously emailed a copy of the affirmations to him in 2000. The name Affirmations was given to the document by Omar Verse Garrison, a British writer hired by the Church of Scientology to write an official biography of Hubbard. So here's some of the affirmations. Let's read them. I can write. My mind is still brilliant. That masturbation was no sin or crime. That I do not need to have ulcers anymore. Again, healing himself, right? That I am fortunate in losing Polly and my parents, for they never meant well by me. That I believe in my gods and spiritual things. That my magical work is powerful and effective. Interesting, right? Why would he put on a tape that he was supposed to listen to for hypnosis, say, my magical work is powerful and effective? That the numbers 5, 25, and 16 are not unlucky or evil for me. I am not bad to look upon. Now, the dude is hideous. I mean, if we look at it, and his bottom teeth are disgusting. That I'm not susceptible to colds. That Sarah is always beautiful to me. So now he's already stolen again. He's with his second wife, who he stole from Jack Parsons. That these words and commands are like fire and will sear themselves into every corner of my being, making me happy and well and confident forever. Course 2. Your eyes are getting progressively better. They became better when you use them as an excuse to escape the Naval Academy. You have no reason to keep them bad. So this is where he claims he healed himself from being blind, right? Your stomach trouble you used to have as an excuse to keep the Navy from punishing you. You are free of the Navy. Your hip is a pose. You have a sound hip. It never hurts. Your shoulder never hurts. Your foot was an alibi. The injury is no longer needed. Testosterone blends easily with your own hormones. You have no fear of what any woman may think of your bed conduct. You know you are a master. You know they will be thrilled. You can come many times without weariness. Many women are not capable of pleasure and sex, and anything adverse they say or do has no effect upon you, upon your pleasure. Now, there's a case in which L. Ron Hubbard raped a girl, and apparently she says what happened is he like inserted his penis into her and laid on top of her for like an hour. Some people speculate it may have been part of a sex ritual that he thought he was conducting, or as we can see from the affirmations, he wasn't very good in bed. And so that he just could have been inept. I'm not sure. You have no fear if they conceive. What if they do? You do not care. Pour it into them and let fate decide. You can tell all the romantic tales you wish, but you know which ones were lies. You have enough real experience to make anecdotes forever. Stick to your true adventures. Masturbation does not injure or make insane. Your parents were in error. Everyone masturbates. You have no words to talk about your Navy life. You do not like to talk of it. You never illustrate your point with bogus stories. It is not necessary for you to lie to be amusing and witty. You like to have your intimate friends approve of and love you for what you are. This desire to be loved does not amount to a psychosis. Okay. You will live to be 200 years old. You will make fortunes writing. You will always look young. Money will flood in upon you. So again, here's some more. You are radiant like sunlight. You can read music. You are a magnificent writer who has thrilled millions. You are a magnificent writer. Or I said that. Ability to drop into a trance state at will. Lack of necessity of following a pulp pattern. You are a psychic. You do not masturbate. So again, weird. He really obsessed with masturbating. You can do automatic writing whenever you wish. You do not care what comes out on the paper when your guardian dictates. The guardian, as I said, was the Empress figure, right? He talks about this Empress figure. You do not know anger. Your patience is infinite. Snakes are not dangerous to you. There are no snakes in the bottom of your bed. You believe implicitly in God. You have no doubt of the all-powerful. You believe your guardian perfectly. Again, the Empress. So here's just a few of the affirmations. Okay, so you guys can do with that what you will. Now, there's a little thing that I want to present here, and then we can go into the rest of our stream today that I think is quite interesting. Okay, and so this, again, I'm not gonna say who I got this from or how I came about it, but this is an interesting PowerPoint, or at least presentation, trying to show the connections of the occult with Scientology. And that people speculate, and the person who put this together. Now, I'm not arguing for it, but I think it's worthy and noteworthy to put forth for, again, the stream, that some people speculate that Scientology is being used potentially by intelligence agencies, that the CIA was working with L. Ron Hubbard, potentially intelligence. Again, people speculate that maybe L. Ron Hubbard was part of the Office of Naval Intelligence, but that Scientology, building upon occultism, again, nothing of it is true, original, other than the lies and distortions he puts into it, but that Project Bluebeam, the idea of an alien invasion that would eventually come to the world to create a new world order, a new government, a new one world structure, that Scientology was going to be a sort of catalyst for this. And that's why talking about Xenu and the Galactic Confederacy and all this stuff puts it in a place where it may then look like, actually, right now we like make fun of Xenu, but then if everybody believes Project Bluebeam, something happens, they believe that the aliens are here. They're like, oh my gosh, maybe Scientology was right. They were right the whole time. And so this is an interesting presentation highlighting some of the influences on Dianetics and Scientology of Hubbard. So we can see Crowley, the OTO, Freud, hypnosis. Again, all these, dude, what's so interesting is that we have evidence that L. Ron Hubbard joined the Order of the Rosicrucians in America. This was in the early 40s. So this was around the time with Jack Parsons. Now, Jack Parsons, again, that's the Ordo Templi Orientis, the OTO. an organization of which Crowley was a head of, and the OTO was in opposition, and they were a rival group of magic to like Heinrich Himmler and some of the German Nazis that were into the occult. So they hated Crowley because they saw him as a rival magician, interestingly enough. Now, of course, people speculate that he was like another intelligence agent for MI5 or the British government. Probably, who knows? So again, this is just highlighting all the influences, how Hubbard influenced Miscavige. So this is showing like where he got influenced and then who he influenced himself. Pantarchy, this is highlighting that Pantarchy was a plan of, so Pantarchy is a social theory proposed by Stephen Pearl Andrews in the 19th century, the American rival of Comte, so about a totalizing, all-encompassing philosophy of universology. The plan of this partly proposes a new spiritual government for the world called the Pantarchy, which includes a new church and a new state with, to use his own language, all other subordinate institutions, educational and informational, which are universal in their scope and nature, in which can be devised and established as subservient to the collective wants of mankind. By the 1860s, he was propounding an ideal society called Pantarchy, which is a society with a voluntary government strongly connected to a new Catholic Church. And a form has been moved, philosophy called universology. Okay. Some people want to highlight that there may be an interesting relationship between the centralizing structure of the Catholic Church with the papacy and how L. Ron Hubbard set up Scientology. Now, L. Ron Hubbard was certainly no friend of Christianity, and I'm going to show you guys the quotes that he had, the disgusting comments he had about Christ, just to show how satanic this guy really was. But some speculate that the hierarchy structure of Scientology was influenced, one, by his understanding of how mean, small mustache man set up the Third Reich, and how the Catholic Church set up their structure. Again, I'm not arguing that. I don't know, but I'm just putting that forward. So here's, again, a piece trying to highlight that potentially the Church of Scientology and its relationship to the Catholic Church, or at least the structure of the Catholic Church. Some people speculate that the Jesuits are part behind promoting of Scientology. Again, I'm not making that claim. I don't know if that's the truth, but certainly that's put forth. This right here, the Scientology, and IE. So Woodward McFeeters, the guy who translated, so if you see right here, translated by Woodward McFeeters, you see that? This is a German text on the signs of the constitution of usefulness of knowledge and knowing. This is about their Aryan, so the Aryan theory of Nazi Germany, written in 1934. This was translated by a Scientologist. And so I've heard people highly questioning the translation of this, because the Scientologist McPherson here, or McFeeters, is trying to make it seem that this was, that L. Ron Hubbard was building upon these things. Because when he talked to the Scientologists, when somebody would highlight, hey, you got this from here, because L. Ron Hubbard claimed to be the Maitreya, the last Buddha, right? The Buddha that's going to lead us into the kingdom, the new world order, the utopia, nirvana, if you will. People would highlight, because he would say, again, we'll play. He claims that he studied like all these different men from around the world, 20 different primitive groups of men he studied. All lies. He did not. But when Scientologists would say, hey, it looks like you got this from here, he'd say, yeah, well, I got a piece of it, and now I've cleansed it because they got all this wrong around it. And so I've cleansed it, and I brought it into Scientology. So the Scientologist thinks that this amalgamation of things within it by L. Ron Hubbard, they believe he took the true pieces of all these world religions and true philosophies, and Scientology is the epitome of all of them, because all the trueness of all these different traditions constitute the total construction of Scientology. So highlighting the psychology of the unconscious, where they're getting the reactive and the analytic mind and stuff like that. looking at Edison, sort of these electrical units. You can see, again, an early understanding of the E meter here, self-hypnosis, report from the readers to this regarding the self-hypnosis, patterns or systems of mental images that make it possible to live a full, happy life. To an increasing extent, it is now possible by scientific modalities to reverse distorted mental images, patterns, and consequential, also to reverse their harmful, illness-creating effects into constructive, positive life. Does that sound a little bit like the engrams? Does that sound a little bit like his reactive mind theory? I think so. So this is talking about how everything is electrical. We see again how to achieve past life recalls, right? Because this is what they do in these auditing sessions. Look, this is L. Ron Hubbard. This is somebody else. So again, using these past life recall systems, hypnosis and Dianetics. Again, now you talk to a Scientologist, they'd say right here, oh, the Church of Scientology officially denies that it uses hypnosis as part of its beliefs and practices. Individuals admitting to having had hypnosis are either a participant or a practitioner and not permitted to undergo training due to the possibility of harm. Yeah, wrong. Well, I'll show that to you guys here in a few. So, okay, moving along. So we see again talking about the messaging of extraterrestrials. We see even Ghislaine Maxwell related to some of this stuff. We see again this Molina guy who is an aeronautical engineer. Molina had 5 associates, including Jack Parsons. Became known as the Caltech as the Suicide Squad because of their dangerous experiments and failures when testing rocket motor designs. Interesting. So there's Jack Parsons with Molina. That's Jack Parsons on the far left. Again, this Frank Molina guy. Here's Roger, is an American physicist, astronomer. Molina serves on the advisory council of METI, Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence, in 2011. You look at his father or grandfather here. Frank Molina, I guess it'd be his father, was an American aeronautical engineer. That's who we were reading about there. So the odd beginnings of Ron Hubbard's career, talking about his relationship with Jack Parsons and magic. A wife of Dianetics founders asked for divorce on cruelty grounds. The Sarah one, the second wife that he had, and claims he was insane. L. Ron Hubbard kidnapped his own child, his daughter, and fled to Cuba. He fled to Cuba. His wife, he would then call his wife. This is in the Going Clear documentary. He would call his wife and tell her that he killed their child. She would be panicking, crying. And then he'd call her back a few hours later and say she was still alive. Again, just manipulating and traumatizing people. He loved it. He loved it. This is Babalon working. We talked a little bit about that already. Enochian magic, Enoch. There's Iowas from Crowley. Here's L. Ron Hubbard. Our whole activity tends to make an individual completely independent of any limitations. Aleister Crowley had some interesting things to say about this. He wrote the Book of the Law. And so it's so interesting. As I said, he promises like this complete independence and liberation through Scientology, but in reality, he's making people more and more and more dependent on him. So here we see then the Master Therion. This is the book that L. Ron Hubbard specifically highlights as related to his development of Dianetics and Scientology. The magic cults of the 8th and 9th and 10th and 11th, 12th centuries in the Middle East were fascinating. The only work that has anything to do with them is a trifle wild in sports, but it's a fascinating work written by Aleister Crowley, the late Aleister Crowley, my very good friend. It's very interesting reading to get a hold of a copy of a book, quite rare, but it can be obtained. The Master Therion by Aleister Crowley. He signs himself the Beast and the Mark of the Beast, 666. This is again from the Philadelphia doctorate courses that I mentioned to you, right? This gets into, again, this sort of Titan and its relationships to the Thetans, potentially a sort of grammatical relationship there. That's what this presentation is talking about. We're not going to go too much into all that stuff, but you guys can look it up yourself if you would like. Here's, again, the symbol of the 8-pointed cross of Scientology, because most people think, oh, Scientology must be Christian, right? They have the cross. No, they have the 8-pointed cross. This 8-pointed cross of Scientology comes from Rosicrucianism. That's why the Rosicrucians, who L. Ron Hubbard was a part of for a brief period, they actually sued him. They sued him when he created Scientology because they said that he was basically stealing some of the stuff that he agreed to not expose by becoming a part of the Order of the Rosicrucians. So interesting. Here's the Thetan and Scientology, yada, yada. In Scientology, operating Thetan is a notional spiritual status above clear. It is described as knowing and willing cause over life, thought, matter, energy, space, and time, MEST. According to religious scholar J. Gordon Melton, it's basically a variation of the Gnostic myth about souls falling into matter and the encumbrances that come with that, with the expectation that instead of divine intervention, there is alien intervention. The church teaches operating Thetan doctrine in 8 separate stages or levels, however. The church claims that there are actually 15 levels, and critics argue the church uses the missing levels to incentivize believers into giving more money to the church in order to be able to experience them once they are finally realized. Sometimes the church requires believers to retake their and therefore pay again for the previous courses in the meantime as they await the missing levels. Each course costs a considerable amount of money, often thousands of US dollars. I was from my research, again, I don't know if some of you guys may know better than I do, that by the time you get to the OT levels, you've already paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. So here's Xenu is the figure in the Church of Scientology. Advanced technology is a sacred and esoteric teaching. According to the technology, Xenu was an extraterrestrial ruler of the Galactic Confederacy who brought billions of his people to Earth in a DC-8-like spaceship. Yes, he claims, and this is where, again, he makes up his crap. He literally told his followers, he's like, yeah, they came in a DC-8, just like that one right there. Yeah, it looks the exact same thing, but it was a rocket. What? In commentary on the impact of the Xenu text, academic scholars have discussed and analyzed Hubbard's writings, their place within Scientology in relationship to science fiction, UFO, religions, Gnosticism, and creation myths. Several authors have pointed out structural similarities between the Xenu story and the mythology of Gnosticism. James A. Herrick, writing about the Xenu text and the making of the new spirituality, the eclipse of the Western religious traditions, notes that Hubbard's Gnostic teachings are evident in his account of human origins. And Hubbard, ideas first expressed in science fiction are seamlessly transferred into a worldwide religion with affinities to Gnosticism. Mary Farrell Bedernowski, writing in America's Alternative Religion, similarly states that the outline of the Xenu mythology is not totally unfamiliar to the historian acquainted with ancient Gnosticism, noting that many other religious traditions have the practice of reserving certain texts to high-level initiates. Nevertheless, she writes that Xenu's story arouses suspicion in the public about Scientology and adds fuel to the claims that Hubbard's system is the product of his creativity as a science fiction writer rather than a theologian. No shit. No shit. I don't know how anybody would need to know that. So here's talking a little bit about Yaldabaoth, the demiurge within the Gnostic paradigm. So this is, again, regarding Scientology and the Sea Organization. The original version, authored by Hubbard himself, created a furor among Scientologists because of several claims he made about horribly upset early participants. He would return from the grave and, in the Messiah-like role, stop an impeding apocalyptic alien invasion by the Galactic Confederacy, implying that the historical Jesus was a homosexual and a pedophile. apparently identifying himself with the Antichrist and warning that someone attempting this auditing level without being prepared may spontaneously combust. Okay, most of you guys are going to be familiar with the demiurge, so we're not going to go too deep into that. Here is OT level 8. Again, this is a part of Scientology. Some 80 odd million years ago, Earth time, and actually dates to 78 million years, but dates are superfluous. Plans were drawn by a group outside of the messed universe for the eventual takeover of a good portion of this universe. Not a particularly large nor imaginative crew. Their exterior perspectives, however, gives them considerable advantage over the time-bound beings, again, us. No doubt you're familiar with the Revelation section of the Bible where various events are predicted. Also mentioned is a brief period of time in which an arch-enemy of Christ, referred to as the Antichrist, will reign and his opinions will have sway. All this makes for a very fantastic, entertaining reading, but there's little truth in it. The Antichrist represents the forces of Lucifer, literally the light bringer, Lucifer being a mythical representation of the forces of enlightenment in the Galactic Confederacy. My mission could be said to fulfill the biblical promise represented by this brief Antichrist period. During this period, there is a fleeting opportunity for the whole scenario to be effectively derailed, which would make it impossible for the mass Markabian landing. Okay, so again, now you can see, yes, exactly. Thank you, Theory Zone. Mass equals matter, energy, space, and time. So again, these entities are outside this. Buzz Lightyear. Yeah. It's wild stuff. It's wild stuff. I just want to say, everybody who's still here, smash that like, guys. I hope you guys appreciate this. It took me a while to put all this stuff together, I will admit. So this took a lot of effort, this stream, but I hope you guys are enjoying it. We haven't even got through halfway yet. We got way more to get through. So buckle in. But smash that like, and if you want to show some love, feel free to send in a super chat using the YouTube or Streamlabs, or you can also use the Dono chat. The rabbit hole led to Wiki. The rabbit hole led to Wiki. Throws in 2 Canadians, says, keep reading. Will do, my brother. Thank you so much for the super chat. Again, anybody who would like to support, please send in a super chat using Streamlabs, the Dono link, or YouTube. With the exception of the original Buddhism, virtually all religions of any sequence or consequence on this planet are mono and pantheistic alike, have been instruments to spread the progress of this evolution of consciousness and bring about the eventual enslavement of mankind. As you know, Siddhartha Gautama never claimed to be anything more than a man. Okay, yada, yada, yada. For those of whose Christian toes I may have stepped on, let me take the opportunity to disabuse you of some of the lovely myths. For instance, the historic Jesus was not nearly the sainted figure this man made out to be. In addition to being a lover of young boys and men, he was given to uncontrollable bursts of temper and hatred that belied the general message of love, understanding, and other typical Markov PR. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Again, glory to God. Glory to Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. It's disgusting how this man talked. It is a good joke that the Galactic Confederacy is associated with the serpent in the garden. Again, you can already see the Gnostic elements there, right? Gnosticism venerates the serpent to reorient the understanding of the fall as a blessing, not a curse. Not a fall, but an ascending, as you will, to become like God. So anyways, you get it. You get it. We're going to keep moving on here. And so he believes that he is, again, here's Hymn of Asia, an Eastern poem by L. Ron Hubbard. Am I Maitreya? Maitreya is the last Buddha, the Buddha before the end of the world. If you see me dead, I will then live forever. I come to you in peace. I come to you as a teacher. I do not come as an officer of church or sect. I come to you as a man. I do not come as a god. I come to bring you wisdom. And so he often referred to himself as the Maitreya. Here's the Maitreya. The Lord of Maitreya is an advanced spiritual entity with high-ranking member. This is, again, the theosophical understanding, because Maitreya is also part of Buddhism. Reputed hidden spiritual hierarchy, the masters of ancient wisdom. According to theosophical doctrine, one of the hierarchy's functions is to oversee the evolution of humankind. In concert with this function, Maitreya is said to hold the office of the world teacher. Theosophical text posits that the purpose of this office is to facilitate a transfer of knowledge. So we can see the Maitreya stuff going on here. Planned deception, staging a new age messiah. This is where it starts to get into the potential of the use of Bluebeam, Project Bluebeam, a sort of fake alien invasion. We can see how intelligence agencies around the world are associated with this. Here's Ronald Reagan. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our people than war and the threat of war? Okay. So anyways, we see here's John Travolta's relationship with Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan. Here's Tom Cruise and, just friends with notable aspiring figures like the Clintons and Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein. Here's Kanye West, again, highlighting. Can we say for a fact that this is explicitly related? I don't know. Potentially, certainly potentially. But this is the fire, the goddess form. Again, number 4. This is number 4 right here. You can kind of see number 4. That's what this is. That is Aleister Crowley dressed up doing that. So L. Ron Hubbard, founder of Scientology, dies. So I just wanted to highlight that for you guys. Please read the Bluebeam content. Most people watching are going to be pretty familiar with it. Regards to alleged plot to facilitate a totalitarian world government by destroying traditional religions and placing with the New Age belief system using NASA. Yeah. I think most people, New Age religion, which would implement a New Age religion with the Antichrist at its head, and start a new world order via a technologically simulated second coming of Christ. He also gave talks on this topic. This is about Serge Monast, was a Canadian investigative journalist, poet, essayist, and conspiracy theorist. He is known to English-speaking readers mainly for the organizing the conspiracy theory project Bluebeam. So, John Dewey, professor of philosophy, said, someone remarked that the best way to unite all the nations on this globe would be an attack from another planet. In the face of such an alien enemy, people would respond with a sense of their unity of interest and purpose. We have the next thing to that of the present time. Okay. So anyway, let's get on to more. Now we can go into a new direction here. Let's see. Here is, again, what I was talking to you guys about anyways, thanks. The rabbit hole led to Wiki for the $2. Anyways, most people are going to be familiar with Project Bluebeam, so I don't need to explain that. But I just wanted to highlight, I was reading earlier about how the Church of Scientology totally rejects. The church says that Hubbard's experience with hypnosis led him to create Dianetics as an alternative means to solve man's problems. But they claim that they certainly don't use hypnosis or anything. Okay, here is the son of L. Ron Hubbard. Now let's get into, I got tons of videos I want us to read a little bit. So let's get into that. Okay, so here is his son, and he has this really good quote, Nibs Hubbard, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, essentially, Scientology doesn't work the way L. Ron Hubbard says it works. It works the way he intended it for it to work. And so he's highlighting how Scientology absolutely works, according to his son, Nibs Hubbard. But it's not working in the way that L. Ron Hubbard says it works, meaning to liberate you, set you free, give you supernatural powers. But it works the way he intended for it to work, to make money, to entrap you, to enslave you, to make you totally dependent upon his system that venerates him, that what he believed makes him into a god and allows him to live forever. So anyways, moving on here. Yeah, thank you, Bourgeois Beatneck. Just ban any of those people. Just don't even put up with them. They have anything that is, of ill intent. Just ban them. Don't even worry about it, bro. So here I want to play again. Nibs Hubbard talking. Here's this right here. Oh, let me connect the speaker. There we go.
Welcome. In 1972, you alleged in court papers that your father had lived a life characterized by severe mental illness and physical disease, consistent failure, and the use of false and fraudulent, oft-time criminal means to cover up these failures and to acquire wealth, fame, and power in order to destroy his perceived enemies. What made you draw those conclusions? What did you see that led you to that?
Because I lived it. 99% of what my father wrote and said about himself is totally untrue. And millions of people have taken this false data over a period of 30 some odd years and relied upon it and built a set of beliefs and built an organization. And basically those allegations that I made were true because throughout up to 1959, I was deeply involved in all of it.
What did you see specifically? I mean, give me an example. When you say criminal means, like, for example, what did you see?
Fraud and deception, the involvement with, in the early days in Phoenix, Arizona, for an example, in 1952, the involvement with organized crime.
Organized crime in what capacity?
The use of Scientology money, his own money, to finance drug importations into the country from Mexico and Colombia.
You saw these things?
Yes, I was involved with incidents.
You recorded any of this? You have papers to prove? Could you walk into court and prove any of these allegations?
I didn't think for years that I could. Most of it I thought was buried, but I think now, since I've been speaking out, that there has been evidence being brought forward proving those allegations.
Why did you leave the church? Because of these allegations, these things that you...
Well, I left the church for a whole wide variety of reasons. It isn't a very simple answer. I left because my wife wanted me to, and also because I wasn't making any money, because all the money flows, of course, to my father, always has. I was also tired of the fraud and the deception, plus his deep involvement in personal use of drugs on himself and others, black magic.
When you say black magic, what are you talking about? I mean, some of the things that I read in the stack of material, it sounds just absolutely unbelievable. What are you talking about when you say this?
Well, the funny thing is that the actual truth is about as far out as Scientology itself. Really, the basis of Scientology, which is rather hidden and covered over, is the occult, the deep involvement with satanic powers. That he felt that he was deeply involved with a British black magician called Crowley, And through putting himself in deep hypnotic trances and the use of drugs on himself, he wanted to become the most powerful being in the world.
Did you consider all of this a religion? Do you now?
No.
Why not?
Because it's a business. It always has been. I was one of the incorporators of one of the original church organizations, and we incorporated just because the AMA and the IRS were giving him a lot of problems in the early 50s.
What was your relationship like with your father? I mean, for a lot of people, they would say, well, maybe you're doing all this because you did not have a good relationship with your father, or maybe you're doing all this for the money. Why are you taking these stands?
Because I want to see the truth. And I can't expose my father without exposing myself. I mean, my life is pretty messed up and goofy anyway. In actual fact, who really belongs in this chair is Crowley Hubbard, my father. But why I'm doing it is let's lay all the facts out and let people decide.
I have a copy of a letter that supposedly came from your father, where he talks about the fact that your mother was an alcoholic and that she deserted both of you, and that you were not in any position to know about him or the church. Do you believe this is an authentic letter, first of all?
I really don't know, but I know that he has these facts all fouled up.
Such as?
Well, that he didn't know me very well. The fact is, from 1952 to 1959, I was very instrumental in and around the organization and the formation of it. I was director of training, taught many, better than 20 advanced clinical courses. I was chief instructor, traveled to England a half a dozen times, lived with him. And so that,
so you're saying you're in a position to really know your father and the church and the workings of the church?
Oh, yes, very much so.
Why do you believe now that, or do you believe now that your father is alive?
I personally don't believe so, but
why not?
I really don't know. That's just, as I said, a personal belief, but I think that if he is alive, he is certainly quite incompetent to handle his own affairs and is being grossly manipulated by the people around him.
People such as?
Well, in my petition, we named, I believe, a 22-year-old boy with about a 9th grade education named David Miscavige was one of them.
And this is a person who belongs to what is called now the Sea Organization, is that correct?
Yes, the Sea Org, and that is the, it's sort of, could be considered the SS arm.
Now, would you explain that? I mean, who are these people, and why have you labeled them that?
Because they're very much parallel a Hitlerite type organization.
And you realize that's very difficult for us to understand that. Here we are sitting in America today in the year 1983, and you're telling us that there's a group of young people who are like the SS.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I mean, how were they indoctrinated? Where were these young people? Where would they have gotten this concept from?
Gotten it from my father. They were raised in Scientology, and all they've known is Scientology and my father. And
were they isolated from the outside world altogether?
Not altogether, but pretty much kept in a very tight group. And of course, outside contact and outside communication has always been kept at a minimum over the years.
When you say SS, I think about harassment, intimidation, even death threats. Have you had any of this?
Oh, it's all of it. I've been the subject of the what's called the fair game doctrine, which has been in existence since the mid-50s. That simply says that anyone perceived as an enemy of Crowley Hubbard or Scientology can be attacked, sued, lied to, deprived of property, and even destroyed without any discipline or retribution from the organization.
Someone has actually tried to kill you?
Yes, I believe so. About 3 or 4 times over the years.
But not now that you're out here public? You have not received any more threats?
No, not since I filed my petition. They've been rather quiet since then.
All right, so pretty wild stuff. I want to address some super chats over on the Dono chat, guys. If you haven't used Dono chat, I want to give a special thank you to Moldy Apple. If you haven't used the Dono chat link, check it out. The link is in the video description, but it's a great way to support the stream. This is the Dono chat. We got 2 super chats over on the Dono chat link. First one comes from Moldy Apple. He says, how the heck did I end up on the dono page? This is too easy. So easy. I bet someone out there wants to match this dono to help build the the COTEL empire. So thank you so much, Moldy Apple, for that $7 super chat. God bless you, bro. I hopefully somebody will match you for that $7 super chat, but I do appreciate your support, brother. Thank you so much. And Elbows McStutter Crutch throws in a super chat and says, yeah, Captain Deadtooth sucked. However, the important question we need to answer is, where do we get that shirt? Well, I appreciate that. This shirt I got a very long time ago. I'm not sure where did I get this shirt? I've had this shirt for so long that you can see the fabric is freaking stretching. Pretty soon I'm going to be poking through this shirt. So this shirt, it's on his last leg. It doesn't have many more days, but I do love this shirt. It was one of my favorite shirts when I was younger. So I think I got this when I was during my master's degree in Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Maybe it was Urban Outfitters. I'm not sure. It's let's see. It's by Globe. You guys remember Globe, the skateboard company? That's who makes this shirt. So anyways, thank you so much, brother. I do appreciate that. Okay, let's get back to more stuff here. So let's just start going through. So this was his son. He changed his name from Lafayette Ronald Hubbard Jr. to Ronald DeWolf. I feel bad for the guy. Here's, again, Scientology and the occult. Tons of stuff that we've already discussed. A lot of Dianetics. In spring of 1449, Hubbard and his wife moved to Bayhead, New Jersey, residing at 666 East Avenue. And then a 1949 letter to Forrest Ackerman. Hubbard promises his upcoming work will give Ackerman the power to rape women without their knowing it, communicate suicide messages to your enemies as they sleep, and sell the Oreo Seco Parkway to the mayor for cash. Evolve the best way of protecting or destroying communism. Hubbard admits that he has, quote, not decided whether to destroy the Catholic Church or merely start a new one, which he started a new one. In 1950, Hubbard published an article entitled Dianetics, the Evolution of a Science in the magazine Astounding Science Fiction. In that article, Hubbard discusses the use of hypnosis, automatic writing, automatic speaking, and clairvoyance. Author John Attic has noted Hubbard seems to have a special interest in the Roman goddess Diana. In 1946, using money from Jack Parsons, Hubbard purchased a boat named Diane. In 1952, Hubbard named his daughter Diana. Later, Hubbard named a Sea Org vessel Diana, and Attic speculates that Dianetics may be the double entendre and notes the existence of his earlier occult practice of Dianism. This is, again, the sort of cult of Diana. And he speculates this because we talked a little bit about the Empress. We talked a little about his blood ritual he did to Hathor. And so many people speculate that all these are interconnected. This was, again, the Philadelphia doctorate course that I told you about. The Book of the Law, the whole and sole subject of all true magical thinking is to become free from any kind of limitation. Hubbard repurposed this for his movement, lecturing that our whole activity leads to an individual completely independent of any type of limitation. Old Aleister Crowley had some interesting things to say about this. He wrote the Book of the Law. Ronald DeWolf, his son, that we just saw, Hubbard's eldest son, wrote that in preparation for the next day's lecture, Hubbard paced the floor, exhilarated by this or that passage from Aleister Crowley's writings. Again, it was his son who said that the Book of the Law was, in fact, Hubbard's real Bible. During the Philadelphia course, Hubbard jokes that he is the, quote, Prince of Darkness, which is met with laughter from the audience. And then this is the Heidi Forrester sex incident where I said basically he raped her. So she recalls that he laid on top of me. As far as I can tell, he had no erection. Remember the affirmations? You could tell he has problem in the bedroom. However, using his hand in some way, he managed to get his penis inside of me. Then for the next hour, he did absolutely nothing at all. I mean, nothing. Author Bent Corden opined that the incident sounded like black sex magic. Afterwards, Forrester was ordered to magically conceive a child. When she failed to do so, she was declared to be in a state of treason and punished by the Church of Scientology. Again, the operating Thetan level 8 is the highest level of auditing in Scientology, is known as the Truth Revealed. It was initially released to select high-ranking public Scientologists in 1988. The OT8 dated 1980. Hubbard explains the document is intended for circulation only after his death. Its purpose is to explain the untold story of Hubbard's life work. Hubbard explains that the reader has undoubtedly heard pieces of data over the years that hinted at the greater untold reality of my mission here on Earth, but the story was never written nor spoken. It is only now that I feel safe to release the information. Hubbard mentions the book of Revelation and its prophecy of a time when an archenemy of Christ, referred to as the Antichrist, will reign. According to Hubbard, the Antichrist represents the forces of Lucifer. Hubbard writes, my mission could be said to fulfill the biblical promise represented by the brief Antichrist period. In the document, Hubbard also teaches that the historic Jesus was not nearly the saintly figure. And so here I want to get to his here we go. Hubbard's view on Jesus. Guys, smash that like. I just saw a super chat go by. Shout out to Wicked Wally. God bless you, bro. He says the master plan was to release Battlefield Earth, and then we all bag and scream for salvation. Instead, everybody laughed. Yeah, pretty much, bro. Pretty much. Thank you so much, Wicked Wally, for the $5 super chat, bro. I really do appreciate that. And shout out to my bro, Keenan Beats, throws in a comment. Appreciate you, brother, for continuing to be a COTEL crew member. He says, before signing up for the COTEL YouTube membership, I was a complete loser with nothing going for me. Now, 2 months in, and my life has changed forever. Dang, now we sound like the Church of Scientology. Yeah, we definitely sound like the Church of Scientology. I am not a real church. Go become Orthodox. Go to your local Orthodox church and become a catechumen. That is my advice. But thank you so much, Keenan Beats. God bless you, brother. I really do appreciate that. Again, I played your great, fantastic music as the intro, man. You're fantastic. Always appreciate it. George throws in $3 and says, great stream, dude. Imagine LARPing as a naval officer via the Sea Org. Sounds like an absolute hotbed for gay stuff. Yeah, I bet. Scientology is explicitly against the gay stuff, but you know, we all know what happens to seamen. So yeah, yikes. But thank you so much, George, for that super chat. I really do appreciate it, my man. And let me just double check the dono chat, make sure we don't have any new ones. No, we are good to go. Okay, let's continue here. So here's Hubbard's views on Jesus. Jesus is described inconsistently and most unfavorably by L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology. In early writings and lectures, Hubbard considered Jesus merely a teacher in his time, but Hubbard later described Jesus and the crucifixion as fictitious, and later material by Hubbard in which he claimed himself to be both Maitreya Buddha and the Antichrist. Hubbard said his own mission in the world was to prevent the second coming of Christ and to describe Jesus as a lover of young boys and given to uncontrollable bursts in temper and hatred. And his 1954 lecture, Scientology, its general background, Hubbard said Christ was a bringer of information. He never announced his sources. He spoke of them as coming from God. In Scientology, an implant is a fake memory installed by evil forces. Mark Driscoll wrote, according to Scientology, Jesus is an implant forced upon a Thetan. Again, so we didn't even get into when Xenu drops all the Thetans onto Earth, and they go into the volcanoes and they melt, and then the spirits fly around Earth and they attach to humans. Before they fly around and attach to humans, He literally describes them as basically being brought into a gigantic movie theater and being inundated with the history of Earth. That's what they're talking about. So Jesus was an implant forced upon a thetan about 1 million years ago. Jack Huberman wrote that in Scientology, Jesus is seen as having been implanted in humanity's collective memory by the character Xenu from Scientology space opera. John Attic wrote that Scientology is essentially anti-Christian, and Hubbard attacked Christianity as an implant and said that Christ was a fiction. Brent Cordian quoted Hubbard as stating that Christianity evolved from the R6 implant. You see how they use like science? It's the R6. They use scientific language for all this jargon. It's absolutely ridiculous. The man, quote, the man on the cross, there was no Christ. The Roman Catholic Church, through watching the dramatizations of people, picked up some little fragments of R6. Hubbard described the belief that Christian heaven is the product of two implants dating back to more than 43 trillion years. He said further that heaven is a false dream that leads thetans to a goal that does not exist and persuades them on the singularity of this life. The operating thetan level 8 is seen in the Fisherman Affidavit. Hubbard explains the untold story of his life's work. Hubbard teaches that the historic Jesus was not really the sainted figure he was made out to be. In addition to being a lover of young boys and men, he was given to uncontrollable bursts and temper and hatred. Hubbard mentions the book of Revelations and its prophecy of a time when an arch enemy of Christ, referred to as the Antichrist, will reign. According to Hubbard, the Antichrist represents the forces of Lucifer. Hubbard writes, my mission could be said to fulfill the biblical promise represented by the brief Antichrist period. Now, this is what I loved when we went to the Eastern Orthodox. They absolutely nail it. Look at the Orthodox description of all this stuff. Super chat comes in from the rabbit hole led to wiki. Says Hubbard equates the Markabian or the Merkaba landing versus galactic confederacy / Lucifer with the second coming, i.e. Project Bluebeam. That's the whole point. All right. Thank you so much. The rabbit hole led to wiki. I appreciate that support, brother. God bless you. So the Eastern Orthodox Church, I love this. Maximos Agior Goussousis, the bishop of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America in Pittsburgh, has stated that Scientology is in fact not a church, but rather a Gnostic or theosophical system of thought. He went on to say that there are at least 6 serious points of contention between the two groups, including 1, the pantheistic nature of Scientology. Scientology's contention that the individual is a non-corporeal semi-divine thetan, which runs contrary to the Greek Orthodox view that the individual is both body and soul, and while created in the image of God, not a God himself. Scientology's belief that the universe is the result of a game of the thetans rather than the account of the Genesis creation narrative. Scientology's belief that the thetan can be saved through the clearing of its engrams, which differs from the Christian view of salvation being only through Christ. And Scientology's view that death is of no consequence and significance because death is repeated innumerable times, which runs contrary to the Christian view of a single physical incarnation. He also states that Scientology teaches that psychic powers, evil spirits, and out-of-body events can be used in order for the thetans to rediscover their true power. Because of this, they have been parallels drawn between Scientology and occultism. He goes on to say that in spite of Scientology's claims to enhance mental health, that many people have already been damaged by Dianetics. Again, isn't this Orthodox bishop totally nailing it? Calling upon what he describes as, quote, unclean spirits, the inexperience of those who do auditing cause hallucination, irrational behavior, severe disorientation, strange bodily sensations, physical and mental illness, unconsciousness, and suicide. Hubbard admitted most of the above hazards, although he maintained that they occurred only through misapplication of the technology of Scientology. In May 2001, the Russian Orthodox Church criticized Scientologists, Jehovah's Witnesses, Unificationists, and Mormons as being dangerous totalitarian sects or cults. So absolutely true. And then this is the book that L. Ron Hubbard advocated, that he said was related to his writing on the Dianetics. Here is, okay, this was the admissions. We read some of that. Here is another really good work. This is by, again, John Attic is a famous ex-Scientologist who's done a lot of work talking about the occult origins of Scientology and some of the ideas and understandings of L. Ron Hubbard. This is a really good article. Now, I don't have time to read the whole thing to you guys, but I'll read a few things so you can get a feel for it. Okay. So in 1945, Hubbard became involved with Crowley's acolyte Jack Parsons. Parsons wrote to Crowley that Hubbard had described his angel as a beautiful winged woman with red hair, whom he calls the Empress, and who has guided him through his life and saved him many times. And the Crowleyite system adherents seek contact with their holy guardian angel. John Whiteside Parsons, usually known as Jack, first met Hubbard at a party in August 1945. Here, I'm going to share this link to you guys so you guys can read this if you want yourself sometime. There you go. Okay. Let's continue on here. Usually known as Jack, first met Hubbard at a party in August of 1945 when his terminal leave from the U.S. Navy began on December 6, 1945. Hubbard went straight to Parsons' house in Pasadena and took up residence in a trailer in the yard. Parsons was a young chemist who had helped to set up jet propulsion laboratories and was one of the innovators of solid fuel for rockets. Parsons was besotted with Crowley's sex magic and had recently become head of the Agape Lodge of the Church of Thelema in Los Angeles. The Agape Lodge was an aspect of the Ordo Templi Orientis, the small international group headed by Aleister Crowley. Parsons' girlfriend soon transferred her affections to Hubbard. With her, Hubbard and Parsons formed a business partnership, as a consequence of which Parsons lost most of his money to Hubbard. However, before Hubbard ran away with the loot, he and Parsons participated in magic rituals, which have received great attention among contemporary practitioners. Parsons and Hubbard together performed their own version of the secret 8th degree ritual of the Ordo Templi Orientis. The secret 8th degree, like the OT8, OTO8 in the Ordo Templi Orientis, in Scientology, the OT8. The ritual is called Concerning the Secret Marriages of Gods with Men and the quote magical masturbation, and is usually a homosexual ritual. The purpose of this ritual was to attract a woman willing to participate in the next stage of Hubbard and Parsons' sex magic. Hubbard and Parsons were attempting the most daring magical feat imaginable. They were trying to incarnate the Scarlet Woman described in the book of Revelation as Babalon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth, drunken with the blood of saints and the blood of martyrs of Jesus. During the rituals, Parsons described Babalon as the mother of anarchy and abominations. The woman who believed had answered their call, Marjorie Cameron, joined with their sexual rituals in March 1946. Parsons used a recording machine to keep a record of his ceremonies. He also kept Crowley informed by letter. The correspondence still exists. Crowley wrote to his deputy in New York, "I get fairly frantic when I contemplate the idiocy of these loats." Crowley was being disingenuous. His own novel, The Moonchild, describes a ritual with a similar purpose. Further, the secret 9th degree order of ritual of the Ordo Templi Orientis contains the homunculus, in which the adept seeks to create a human embodiment of one of the energies of nature, a god or goddess. The fact that Hubbard and Parsons were committing sacrilege in Crowley's terms, Crowley respelled Babalon as he respelled magic. His magic was entirely dedicated to Babalon, the Scarlet Woman. Crowley believed himself if the servant of the slave of Babylon, the Antichrist, styling himself the Beast 666. Hubbard and Parsons' attempts did not end with the conception of a human child. However, just as Crowley said, gods are but names for the forces of nature themselves, so it might be speculated that Hubbard embodied Babalon not in the human form, but through his organization. And I definitely do believe that. I believe Scientology is the outgrowth of all his magical practices. I mean, that's basically my claim for today's stream. And I really do believe that to be the case. Hubbard's interest in the occult was kindled long before he met Parsons. It dates back at least to his membership of the ancient and mystical order Rosicrucis. Having stolen Parsons' girl and his money, Hubbard carried on with magical practices of his own devising. Scientology attempted to reclaim documents which recorded these practices in its case against former Hubbard archivist Gerald Armstrong. Some $280,000 was paid to publishers Ralston Pilot to prevent publication of Omar Garrison's authorized biography of Hubbard. However, Garrison retained copies of thousands of Hubbard documents and showed me one which had been referred to as among the Armstrong trial. The blood ritual is an invocation of the Egyptian goddess Hathor he performed by Hubbard during the late 1940s. As the name suggests, the ritual involved the use of blood. Hubbard mingled his own blood with that of his then wife, the girlfriend he had stolen from Parsons, and with whom Hubbard contracted a bigamous marriage. In a 1952 Scientology lecture, Hubbard referred to Aleister Crowley as my very good friend. In fact, the two black magicians never met, and Crowley expressed a very low opinion of the man who he saw had tricked in his disciple Jack Parsons. Even so, Hubbard had a very positive regard for Crowley, calling his work fascinating and recommending one of his books to Scientologists. Having referred to Crowley as the Beast 666, Hubbard said that he had picked a level of religious worship, which is very interesting. He also made it clear that he had read the fundamental text of the Crowley teaching, the Book of the Law. In his 1952 lectures, Hubbard also referred to the tarot cards, saying that they were not simply a system of divination, but a philosophical machine. They have particular mention of the Fool card, saying the Fool, of course, is the wisest of all. The fool who goes down the road with the alligators barking at his heels and the dogs yapping at him, blindfolded on his way, he knows all there is to know and does nothing about it. Nothing could touch him. Only the tarot pack, which has an alligator on the Fool card, is Crowley's. When I interviewed Gerald Armstrong, Hubbard's archivist, in 1984, he told me of a Hubbard's scale dating from the 1940s. At the base of the scale was the word animals. It then ascended through laborers, farmers, financiers, fanatics, and the fool to God. Hubbard seems to have seen himself as the fool and was perhaps trying to create a trampoline of fanatics through whom he could achieve divinity. Indeed, if Scientology could live up to its claims, then Hubbard would be a God maker. Of course, the tarot pack also contains the Empress card, and knowing this, it is finally possible to understand what Hubbard believed his guardian angel to be. Crowley examined the tarot in the Book of Thoth of the Empress card. He said she combines the highest spiritual and lowest material qualities. Crowley identifies the Empress as the Great Mother, and indeed on her robe are bees, the traditional symbol of Sybil. Crowley is not alone in the belief of the different cultures give different names to the same deities. The worship of Sybil goes back to at least 3000 BC. She entered Greek cultures as Artemis, to the Romans as Diana, the huntress. Crowley also identified the Empress with the Hindu goddess Shakti, the Egyptian goddess Isis, and Hathor. Crowley directly identified Isis with Diana. More usually, Crowley called the Empress by the name Babalon. Contemporary New Age groups see the Great Mother in the respect of Gaia, the Earth Mother. This is far from Crowley's view. Diana, the patroness of witchcraft, was seen by Hubbard rather through the eyes of Crowley than as a benevolent, loving mother. Hubbard made no reference for an example of Robert Graves' white god. Okay. Oh, man. Woo! Smash that like, guys. Truly appreciate all you guys still being here. We got another super chat that came in. Shout out to Buzzy B, throws in $10, says, thank you for your excellent research. Well, thank you, Buzzy B, for the super chat, man. I truly do appreciate it. I'm glad you guys are enjoying this stream. It's certainly, I think it's quite interesting. Again, these occult relationships in Scientology. When the blood ritual was mentioned during the Armstrong trial in 1984, Scientology's lawyer asserted that it was an invocation to an Egyptian goddess of love. Hathor is indeed popularly seen as a winged and spotted cow which feeds humanity. However, there is an important lesson about Scientology and the practice of magicians. The teachings of magic are considered by many practitioners to be powerful and potentially dangerous, and therefore have to be kept secret. One of the easiest ways to conceal the true meaning of a teaching is to reverse it. By magicians, Hathor is seen as an aspect of Sekhmet, the avenging lioness. One authority on ritual magic has revealed the identity of Hathor as the destroyer of man. An important lesson in the is that Scientology has both a public and hidden agenda. Publicly, it is a church. Privately, as the record of conviction shows, it is an intelligence agency. Many public Hubbard works speak of helping people. In his largely secret fair game teachings, however, Hubbard is outspoken in his attack upon either critics of himself or his work. For example, in What is Greatness, Hubbard says, the hardest task one can have is to continue to love one's fellows despite all reasons he should not. And the true sign of sanity and greatness is so to continue. In one statement on the fair game law, however, Hubbard said that his opponents may be tricked, sued, or lied to, or even destroyed. The practitioners unlicensed by him, Hubbard says, harass these persons in any way possible. Nor did he exclude the possibility of murder against those who opposed him. Or harassment of critics may explain the death of academic research into Scientology. Hubbard's use of contradiction to captivate and redirect his followers is worthy of a separate study, but it has roots in the study of magic. Perhaps he related the Dianetics also to Janus, the two-faced god whose name is sometimes spells Dianus. Okay, so this goes on and on and on. So you guys can read that if you'd like. Dusty Sklar has said that she known about Hubbard, she would have used him in the last chapter of the Nazis and the Occult rather than Sun Myung Moon. L. Ron Jr., who was sure of the teachings of the German Order and the Thule Society, had passed directly to his father by a courier. In this light, the white circle on a red square of Scientology's International Management Organization can be readily compared to the Nazi flag. The four lightning flashes, or sig runes, are also common to Nazism. No explanation is given for these sig runes by Scientology. They appear to be on the RTC symbol. At the time that both of these symbols were introduced, Hubbard also created the International Finance Police, headed by the International Finance Director, an unusual choice of word. So this then goes into the Third Reich and their interest into the occult and all this different stuff. So again, like him being an outright liar, he was absolutely, Scientology is outright against the use of substances. And yet Hubbard himself was an alcoholic and a drug addict, specifically opioids and amphetamines. From what I read, and I got that from John Attic. Now, John Attic he's a former Scientologist, and the way I would describe him now is like a Gaia worshiping, liberal. He claims he's an agnostic mystic. So certainly has many opinions we wouldn't agree with, but his work on uncovering some of the occult relationships and foundations is really interesting. So that's why I want to bring that up. And I shared that link so you guys can check that out. He also has a really good on Hubbard on hypnosis, which highlights, again, the absolute lies. Again, Hubbard says don't do drugs, and then he's addicted to drugs. He says, oh, hypnosis is terrible, and then he's actually using hypnosis on other people and himself. And so if you want to read this article, you can do so right here. I'm going to share that link now, and so you guys can check that out there. Okay, what do we want to get into next? We'll just keep moving along here. So this was an amazing clip in the archives of Scientology. This was their first headquarters. And this headquarters is, interestingly enough, where they would, the British government would perform psychological operations and was always associated with the occult. So check this out.
This road leads into a stately mansion set in a forest glade. To the people of nearby East Grinstead, an old English town set in its ways, it's a source of irritation and trouble. And as far as the British government is concerned, St. Hill Manor is a haven for sinister cultists who prey on the unwary and bilk the gullible. Whatever it is, the manor is also world headquarters for Scientology, the brainchild of a one-time science fiction writer, L for Lafayette, Ron Hubbard, who has been barred from Britain and who is said by some to be living on a yacht now moored off Tunisia. And what is Scientology?
So this was, again, during the time where he was evading his tax crimes in the United States. Scientology was exploding. Dianetics was an incredibly popular book, and he was sailing around the Mediterranean with his new organization called the Sea Org.
Scientology. Good question. I put it to Jane Kember, who with David Gaiman, a one-time real estate agent, is a spokesman for the school.
We address the being or the spirit or the soul, whatever you wish to say the person is, and we raise or help that person to raise their level of awareness spiritually. And the more aware the individual becomes of himself and of others and of the environment, the more able he is to handle the environment, himself and others.
The organization claims members in most Western countries, including Canada, and 16,000 in Britain alone. They pay anything from a few cents for literature written by Hubbard to hundreds of dollars for the right to attend classes at the manor. To people who live near the manor, Scientology is a pain in the neck.
I'm sure there's something sinister about it. For instance, some of the techniques they have of teaching.
Such as?
Well, for instance, on this driveway just down here, we hear this shouting that's indoctrination, I suppose they call it, where these two people will sit on two chairs opposite one another, and a man or the woman will have a small object in his hand. He will pick this up. While he's doing so, he will shout in a very loud voice, "Stand up, sit down, thank you. Stand up, thank you. Sit down, thank you." This will sometimes go on for as much as 2 to 3 hours.
Again, this is sort of a programming, a minor form of hypnosis, suggestibility, getting people trained to take orders, one from each other. So it doesn't seem like it's L. Ron Hubbard. It doesn't seem like it's Scientology. It's, oh, this is just an exercise. This is an exercise, right? No, this is all about a sort of mental warping and programming.
Do you really think that they're trying to take over the world?
Yes, I do.
I think the whole thing is just a confidence trick.
Businesses in nearby East Grinstead who balk at helping the Scientologists or who speak ill of them have been declared out of bounds. But for some citizens, the cult hits home in a more personal way. Mrs. Helen Waitman says it turned her son against her.
Well, he simply announced that he was a Scientologist now and he wouldn't be living at home anymore. And he went.
Beneath these stones, the ashes of 3 people believed to have been witches and burned to death in 1556. The Scientologists of 1968 say that they too are the subject of a witch hunt. The good burghers of East Grinstead say they don't go that far, but if they had their way, the Scientologists would move to greener pastures. Ron Chester, CBC News, East Grinstead.
So here is L. Ron Hubbard himself. So L. Ron Hubbard, like David Miscavige, did not do a lot of public interviews, certainly not with non-believers. This interview they put out, and it said this was supposed to be a challenging and thought-provoking interview. Turns out it was all fake. This interview was in fact done by another Scientologist. All the questions were scripted. L. Ron Hubbard knew how everything was going to be done, and this was a propaganda film. But I just want to play it so you guys can get a feel for again, who he was and how he was, right? So this is the man, the myth, the Satanist, the occultist, the cult organizer, the charismatic cult founder, L. Ron Hubbard.
What depths can man fall to? And what is he anyway? And I began to ask this question, what is man? And I found, oddly enough, that nobody could tell me what man was. What did he consist of? Where was he going? What was he doing? I became very fascinated with this particular line of research, and I made it my life's work.
Did you read widely of philosophy?
Yes, but the philosopher, of course, has spent most of his working years in his ivory towers, and he was pretty insulated from life. To really know life, you've got to be part of life. You must get down and look. You must get into the nooks and crannies of existence. You have to rub elbows with all kinds and types of men before you can finally establish what he is.
And you, in fact, did this?
Yes, I've slept with bandits in Mongolia, and I've hunted with pygmies in the Philippines. As a matter of fact, I have studied 21 different primitive races, including the white race. And my conclusions were that man, regardless of his state of culture and so forth, was essentially the same, that he was composed of, he was a spiritual being, and he was a spiritual being that was pulled down to the material, the fleshly interests, to an interplay in life that was, in fact, too great for him to confront. And I concluded finally that he needed a hand.
Now, what was the first step in the formulation of Scientology? What was the first piece of knowledge that you uncovered?
Well, that is an interesting question, because when I first entered a university, I took science.
Yeah, Melly said he's tweaking his jaws. It wouldn't be surprising, but this, like I said, this interview is totally scripted. And now I do have it at 1.25, so I can make it normal just so we can see what exactly it looks like. But you can see the dude's an absolute liar, prolific liar. Like, it turns out he didn't do much of any of that stuff that he just talked about. He didn't go to all these different places. He didn't study all these people. And as everybody highlights, he certainly wasn't a philosopher or highly educated. He flunked out of college. He flunked out of high school. He was horrible at math. Like I said, Scientologists believe that he was a nuclear physicist, and yet he couldn't even pass like molecular. What was it? It was I forget what one of the class. So his biology and his mathematic courses, like, he got straight Fs. He got like an A in gym, but that was about it. So the dude was not the brightest bulb in the pantry, and he's just an absolute liar. The whole thing, he's just continually lying.
Science and mathematics. I was forced to take this rather than philosophy, which was my natural bent. And I learned the rules of logic and the scientific approach. These things, by the way, are not generally known to philosophers. And my first effort was to find a common denominator to all men. And I had seen him in his more primitive states, and I'd seen him in his highly cultured states. And I said, somewhere one can isolate a common denominator that embraces all men. And perhaps from that, we can unlock this riddle.
You mentioned just now that you discovered for yourself that man was a spirit. Are you here comparing Scientology with a religion, any religion, in fact, that also sees man as a spirit?
Well, man has conceived man to be a spirit for many more years than he has conceived man to be an animal or a materialistic thing. We have a 2,000-year history of man as a spirit, whereas we only have less than a century of considering simply mud. And therefore, my study is more traditional than most philosophies. Now, when you get most modern renditions and so forth, but man poses a great many problems, and he is so varied from culture to culture, from type to type, race to race, that when I discovered the common denominator of existence and so forth, I was away and I could go forward from that point. And I did discover that.
Can you now take us forward from this point and tell us where you went when you made that first discovery of yours?
Well, I discovered that the common denominator of existence was survive. Whatever else man was trying to do, whether he was cultured or primitive and so on, he was attempting to survive. And then one had to move forward from this point to find out what methods he used to survive, how he adapted himself.
You guys see how he's just a captivating, and not that I find him captivating, but if you weren't in the know, you would just sit and listen to him talk and talk and talk. Here's a question. When did Dianetics really begin?
The same word.
Now, when was this book published?
1950, May the 9th, 1950.
And is that as old as Scientology or Scientology Dianetics is?
Yes, yes. Well, actually, no. Researches on this really started in university in 1930, 31, and moved on.
See, now he's claiming that he's been researching and doing this stuff for years and years. It's almost 20 years he's been researching before he wrote about it.
Forward, the first major discovery that life, all forms of life behaved according to the principle of survival and so forth was made in 1938. And after the war, after some years of study, I was able to move it up into a publishable form. But I was actually known for many years for working in this particular field, but I never wrote anything about it.
Dude's an absolute lie. I mean, if he's talking about magic and looking into magic, then yes, that's the case, right? But he's certainly no engineer, mathematician, philosopher, studier of cultures and Absolutely, the dude's a liar. He just lies about everything.
Never published anything, never told anybody about it to amount to anything. And when I did, it was like I started an avalanche.
Now, if someone wants to get into Scientology, they read your books, as you said, but where do they go from there?
They would find the nearest organization and they would go there and they would get training, or as we call it, processing and so on.
Can you describe processing?
Processing is the principle of making an individual look at his own existence and to improve his ability to confront what he is and where he is.
To make him look at his own existence.
That's right.
And confront where he is and what he is.
That's right.
How?
Yeah, so that you can confront Xenu and the Galactic Confederacy. Just want to remind people to smash that like, and if you want to show some appreciation or love, feel free to send in a super chat using YouTube or the Streamlabs link, or as Moldy Apple has done, use the Dono chat link. I'd be greatly appreciative. I just want to play a little bit more of L. Ron Hubbard so you guys can get a feel for what he was like and how slimy that guy was. I mean, he's like the most slimy character you can imagine.
How is this brought about?
You just ask the person to look, actually. Of course, you're asking a very, very technical question. An auditor has to be able to get his questions answered, and the individual who's being processed finally has to answer the question. The question is asked until it is totally answered and the person is totally aware that he has answered it.
Is this a form of psychoanalysis?
No, psychoanalysis, they lay back. Don't associate Scientology with such people. That's terrible. That's bad manners, you know? I mean, that business about sex and all that sort of thing.
Meanwhile, again, multiple authors have wrote about how he's basically adopting psychoanalytic, hypnotic, occult aspects and then infusing them into Dianetics and Scientology. So he tells people, oh my gosh, don't go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. All that stuff is quack. It'll just make you crazier. Meanwhile, that's exactly what he's using and creating in his own system.
These people, you know, in psychoanalysis, they worked on somebody for a year just to find out if they could help him. And then they charged him about 9,000 quid for having not helped him and so forth. But that's psychotherapy. That's for the neurotic or the person who is insane or something like that. That has nothing to do with Scientology. Scientology is for an able guy like you or like me, able to function in life, able to make his own way, does his work and so forth. All right, that's the man that should be helped. That's the man you should help out, because that fellow is having a hard time. And he's got his problems. Now, if you put him in a position where his intelligence is up to handling his problems, where his ability to confront life is increased, you'll find out that he is better. He can better his environment. He can take care of his family better. He can do his job better. He can live better, and so forth. And that's all we want in Scientology. The insane and so forth, somebody else can have them. They've already failed.
But you did say that people coming into Scientology should have this desire to help.
Oh, yes.
Cannot Scientology go out of its way to help these people who are perhaps not completely
yes, you can do. Scientology could do things like that. When you know the basics of human existence and so forth, you could apply them in almost any sphere. For instance, a great many people think that Scientology does medical treatment and so forth, simply because people who are processed and so on tend to get well and recover from certain illnesses. That's a secondary action. A person who is able, of course, is more able physically also. And however, when a person turns up who is ill and so forth, we just send him to the doctor. We're not interested in treating human illness.
You said it could help certain illnesses, though. What kind of illnesses?
Oh, it is not. It is not, in actual fact, medical treatment. So to say what illnesses it helps and so forth would be, well, if a person has psychosomatic illnesses and that sort of thing, and they tend to fall away as he increases his ability. But this is no treatment of those illnesses.
Now, if this is correct, why don't the medical profession use Scientology?
They do. They do in many parts of the world. As a matter of fact, a doctor in Michigan the other day told somebody that Dianetics was totally owned by the medical profession now and didn't belong to Hubbard anymore.
Scientology has attracted a lot of publicity in the press, and the press has said that it tends to be something of a racket to make money for those people who are running it.
No, that of course, most press is motivated by vested interests, as anyone knows, and they merely say what they're told to say. And when you realize that the medical psychiatric world have an investment which brings a return of 2 to 3 billion pounds per annum over the world, they try to protect that. And that is the source of criticism of Scientology.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can see this bottom part, but it says, to this day, Scientology still claims that Big Pharma is behind all criticism of Scientology's bad press, lawsuits, etc. Maximus says he literally looks possessed with demons. He is. And I want to end it. I want to ask, right through here, is man basically good? And then it goes into, does man help himself with Scientology, and is auditing a form of hypnotism? Are drugs used in auditing? So we're going to listen to these next few questions.
Man can be bettered spiritually.
Do you think that man is basically good?
Man is basically good, yes. His experiences have led him into evil, and he very often solves his problems from his own point of view only. And when he solves a problem from his own point of view, of course, he gets other points of view into trouble. What is good for a duck hunter is not good for the duck.
Do I understand from this, then, that through Scientology processing, you can show man where he's going wrong and help him in this way? In other words, he helps himself.
He helps himself. We do not say, you must do this, you must do that, and so forth. We show him. We show him only how to confront his existence, how to handle his immediate problems. And as he progresses up the line toward a greater spiritual freedom, he learns that there are wrong ways to go about things and right ways to go about things. And he gradually drops away the shortcuts to fortune, the shortcuts to fulfillment of his desires, and so on. that we normally associate with evil practices. And he becomes an honest man.
You said that through Scientology processing, a person was able to look at the problems, to confront the problems that they were facing in their everyday life. Is this some form of hypnotism?
Oh, no. That's very funny. Man is asleep. He is hypnotized. He is made to fixate on certain things, you see, and the process that you normally know as brainwashing and that sort of thing is hypnotizing man. It's forcing him into certain values. It's crowding him by various duress. And
I just want to highlight again the theme that I pointed out is that whatever he's doing, he flips it, right? So Scientology and auditing and all these different things, they're not hypnotizing man. They're not brainwashing him. The world is doing that. The Thetans are doing that, right? Man is already deluded. And so what he's doing, he's unprogramming him. Meanwhile, it's doing the exact opposite. The dude is a perpetual liar. I don't think he can actually say something truthful. The dude is an habitual liar.
Into these values. And he eventually becomes a person who has no awareness. Now, in Scientology, reverse the process and you make him wake up. And he gradually gets more and more alert. And he's more and more wide awake. And his IQ rises higher and higher. And he is more and more capable of knowing what's going on about him. It's quite the reverse. Any ideology that wants to hypnotize man into believing, well, take communism, for instance. Want to hypnotize man into believing he's this or that or the other thing and so forth. It comes a terrible cropper with Scientology because such a man becomes unbrainwashed, you might say. He becomes unhypnotized. And that was the first thing, one of the first things I discovered about processing. It was actually the basic discovery of processing, that man was asleep and he had to wake up. And then I went about trying to find out ways and means of how to make him do this, and that became processing.
Do you use drug?
Yeah, Theoria Zone says his writing's well done. He does weave elements well together and is a good wordsmith and storyteller. And that's where people that have left Scientology and that new L. Ron Hubbard, they say, yeah, he's a bullshitter, no doubt about that. But the thing that he does is he tells stories. And that's what he does with his lies. He's constantly telling you a story. He's constantly creating a network of associations for you to buy into. And again, and focus on these mental images, these mental landscapes of the galactic confederacy and who you're going to be and your supernatural abilities. And you're, as you audit these engrams and your reactive mind, your IQ is going to get better and better and better. You're going to make more money. You're going to be, the person that you've always wanted to be. And so it's his storytelling. Everything is a story. His magic is the storytelling. And it's his audacity that he is willing to just outright lie about everything. That's what makes him such a charismatic and powerful figure, if you will, as a cult leader.
Drugs in any way?
No, never. Once in a while, Scientologists will take vitamins or something like that to, just like anybody else does, but otherwise no drugs.
Is there any equipment used in this processing?
Yes, we have a meter, one of the most misunderstood objects that anybody had anything to do with. And a meter simply shows where an individual is aberrated. And the lie detector, of course, is not a lie detector. It doesn't detect lies. It only detects disagreements. You ask the fellow, did you murder the girl? And he disagrees with murdering the girl. And of course, he gets a reaction on the lie detector, and they take him out to the electric chair and electrocute him. Lie detectors are no good. But it does show that he is upset about the idea of murdering a girl. Do you follow? Now, if you ask him why he was upset about this particular idea, you might find some relative who had been murdered that he had completely forgotten about. And he illuminates this sector of his life, and it clears.
How would you describe the mental state of a patient during processing?
Well, I've never processed a patient, so I wouldn't know, you see, because patients are people who are sick, and in mental institutions and that sort of thing and all the like. Worked with such people just in the normal experience of existence. This has nothing to do with Scientology. But how is he? He's wide awake, bright alert, quite interested, and he is examining things which he had never examined before, and he becomes quite happy about it.
Doesn't he get introverted looking into his unconscious mind?
Yes, but he introverts in order to extrovert. In other words, he is actually handling the things which cause him to be introverted. And when he has handled those things, he extroverts.
You've mentioned a lot about freedom of the mind, Mr. Hubbard, but often this can be mistaken for a form of anarchy, where the person is under no discipline whatsoever.
Well, you find out that man has to be put under discipline to the degree that he is aberrated. And man being basically good, the more you make him free, why, the better his behavior is. And we have, I don't know how many case histories that prove this.
You mentioned aberrated. What does that mean?
Aberrated is a crooked line. That's the definition of the word. It comes from light traveling in a crooked line. And man's thinking is very often in a crooked line. So he gets from point A to B through so many different points that he never does arrive at B. And that is called aberration.
Which is exactly what he's doing with Scientology.
When you straighten that out, and he can think straight, you might say, he is no longer aberrated.
All right, moving on. This is another one. We're not going to watch this. You kind of got the feel for L. Ron Hubbard. Yeah, so we're not going to dive into any more. But
of 1950, and just before the first.
Again, I got everything sped up, but you get a feel for it. So here's some of the admissions where he literally talks about.
Aside.
Watch this. This is from the Philadelphia doctorate course that I told you, where he allured. He references Aleister Crowley multiple times. Well, when this came out public, the Scientology took certain clips out of it, and so here is one of the sections that they cut out, where he literally is basically talking about black magic.
Says no ghosts or boogeymen exist. Well, this boogeyman does exist. It's a very simple remedy, and that's just make sure that the remedy is passed along. That's
the remedy being Scientology.
All. Don't hoard it. Don't hold it. And if you ever do use any black Dianetics, use it on the guy who pulled Scientology out of sight and made it so it wasn't available.
Black Dianetics. Black Dianetics. Interesting.
Because he's the boy who would be electing himself the new order. We don't need any more new orders. All those orders, as far as I'm concerned, have been filled. Now, when it comes then to logic.
Okay, so you get it. Here's again, Leah Remini of the King and Queens. Now, this might be copyrighted, so I'm not going to play too much of it, but I'll just play a few clips so you can get a feel for it.
So, talk me through.
So you go through this rigorous.
What level did you get to?
OT 5.
Ooh, you got close.
Yeah, I got close. I got to to get to this advanced level. It's called advanced levels.
Okay?
Right. You are put through the ringer. They go through every folder. From the moment you walk into a church of Scientology, they have folders on you. So everything you've ever said is written down and videotaped. Okay. So they get your folders and they call it. They go through it. Okay. And they go through every transgression. Are you still humping your pillow?
So this is going to get copyrighted, so we're not gonna continue this one. So skipping forward, this one's probably going to get copyrighted too, but I wanted to play South Park's little section on it. We'll see if we can get by it. Oh, no, it's for sale on YouTube. They're going to definitely get it. Maybe I can find it on Twitter. I don't know. Anyways, I'll just share the link. So if you guys haven't seen this classic South Park making fun of what Scientology actually believes, I'm going to share that link right there. You guys can check that out. I'm not going to play it because it's going to be copyrighted. I can already see that right now. And so I didn't even get into the bridge. The bridge is what basically L. Ron Hubbard talks about as the sort of the ladder of ascension that you're going to be walking towards to your limitless existence as you become clear and then exercise the thetans through the OT levels. Again, here's the thetan. We talked a little bit about that. The bridge to total freedom. That's what I was just describing. That's what this is. Xenu, again, the ruler of the Galactic Confederacy. The Church of Scientology only reveals the Xenu story to members who have completed a lengthy sequence of courses costing large amounts of money. The Church avoids to mention Xenu in public statements and has gone to considerable effort to maintain the story's confidentiality, including legal action on the grounds of copyright and trade secrecy. Officials of the Church of Scientology widely deny or try to hide the Xenu story. Despite this, much material on Xenu has leaked to the public via court documents and copies of Hubbard's notes that have been distributed through the internet. So, again, if you want to read that whole section, you can. It's getting around 3 hours. I'm ready to hop off here. But I want to, again, thank everybody for coming. Please smash that like. If you have any more questions or super chats or comments, feel free to send those in before we hop off here. I'm going to just wrap up on a few more things and then hop off. So if you want to, again, if you want to read about Xenu, you can read this whole story here. There's multiple places online. Dianetics, obviously the book that prompted everything. L. Ron Hubbard. This was Babalon. This is Religious Beliefs of Jack Parsons, the Ordo Templi Orientis, the group, again, that was led by Aleister Crowley, the Book of the Law, and the Maitreya, again, the Buddhist eschatology, the last and final Buddha. So, guys, that is going to do it. Thank you all very, very much for that. As you can see, this is quite the summation of the occult origins and foundations of Scientology. To think that L. Ron Hubbard created all this stuff up himself isn't exactly the truth. He certainly added his own lies and intricacies and variations, but it's an adoption of theosophic spirituality, Thelemite theology, occult practices, psychology and psychiatry in regards to forms of hypnosis and manipulation of people, mixed with his own sci-fi stories. And so the sci-fi stories make you wonder, again, with Project Bluebeam and the normalization of aliens and extraterrestrial life, and certainly in the Western world. It's funny because ETs and aliens are all spotted within the Anglophone world, so the Anglosphere, English-speaking world. But it makes you wonder about Project Bluebeam and potentially a revival or a growth in Scientology and its adherents. But you know, who knows? I'm skeptical of that. I think Scientology is just a little bit too far-fetched for people to eventually adopt, and I think it's probably Project Bluebeam is probably going to be somewhere in the middle where, you know, this ecumenical movement in regards to world religions is going to be tied with aliens and wisdom and the one world government and all this stuff that's coming. So just keep your eyes open, be aware of it. I hope that you guys learned a little bit more about what Scientology is and where it comes from and how it relates, and how much of a absolute charlatan L. Ron Hubbard was. You know, people say, hey, it was written by a science fiction writer, and that's not even the bad part. You know, it's like just learning about who he was. And I think that's probably why he was so good at writing, right? Again, he has the Guinness Book of World Records for the most publications. And it's because he just makes shit up all the time. And it's like, that's how he wrote his stories. And so Scientology is the mixing of all his science fiction with all the sort of occult aspects that he was interested in. And clearly the guy was demonic. Clearly the guy was satanic. And Scientology is just the outgrowth of all that. And I think the people who get involved with it, the people who don't want to do evil, eventually leave. But you look like David Miscavige, and I mean, these people have bought into, whether he still fully believes in Scientology or not, I'm skeptical, but he's certainly not going to give up that power. I mean, the money, the influence, the manipulation of people, having your own essentially intelligence agency. Like, that's the thing with auditing, is they keep entire tracks of people, of everything that they've confessed, all their, their weaknesses, the stuff that they used to do, everything that they're guilty of. And so the church then can blackmail you with it. And so it's the perfect game. It's the perfect cult, because it's just you're literally giving them ammunition to keep you in control. It's amazing. But anyways, a major shout out and thank you to our anonymous sponsor for tonight's stream. God bless you, man. I really appreciate it. Smash that like, and I am going to go on a little bit of a vacation. So I will see you guys. Again, reminder, I have my speech, my Montanica 2023 speech. If you guys would like to have access to that, please go become a website member. I would greatly, greatly appreciate that. Yeah, exactly. Theoria Zone says it's run like an intelligence agency, because it is. And that's why many people speculate that the CIA was probably involved in the organization. If not, at least they admit that they had informants inside the Church of Scientology, but many speculate that L. Ron Hubbard himself was working with the CIA, which makes a lot of sense, if you ask me. So wild stuff, wild stuff. But like, again, Theoria Zone highlighted, they give you practical, useful stuff to get you in. You pay for it, you pay for more, you pay for more. And pretty soon, I mean, with the money, with the belief systems, with the imagination, I mean, you're so deep into a rabbit hole of an alternate reality, you can't get out. So anyways, guys, I'm going to hop off. I will see you when I see you. As always, until next time, God bless.